And good morning. Welcome to RSBN Live from Auburn, Alabama. I'm Robert McNeely. Always a joy to come to you, especially on Friday. TGIF. I hope you have a wonderful start to your weekend as we look at everything surrounding President Trump. What a week he had, not only in Congress, laying out an amazing agenda, all of the achievements in less than 50 days in office, but what he seeks to do in the coming future. And a great weekend it'll be for him as he'll be heading off to Mar-a-Lago this evening. And we'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, Colonial Metals Group. I'd like to thank Paul Stone, the great CEO of the company, who has laid out really a wonderful argument as to why you need gold and silver as part of your portfolio. Not just properties and assets or even a 401k or IRA. Gold and silver are time-tested, tangible, precious metals you can hold in your hand, and they've been able to hedge off any radical government or leaders for centuries now. So scan that QR code now on your screen or go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN for your free 2025 gold guide. And in there you can find how much gold has increased in value in the last few years, even since the year 2000. And that went up roughly 840% since 1971, since we went off the gold standard during the Nixon administration, up over 7,000%. So gold does not go down, it only goes up. So reach out to my friends at Colonial Metals Group, freegoldguide.com/RSBN. Do so today. And right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, we are on the right side of history, covering everything from a live desk, whether it's President Trump, Vice President Vance, or the 119th Congress. And we like those stories out there that are really outside of the Beltway and throughout America, maybe throughout the world even. So send us your feedback at rsbn.tv. That's feedback at rsbn.tv. If you have any America First stories or something you think we should know about, please feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to talk about it right here on the network. And talking about President Trump's executive orders yesterday, there was one that really stood out to me and was really quite special. It was a proclamation for Irish Americans and the critical role they have played in the United States. I'll read some of that here. Courageously, they have overcome adversity and hardship to embolden our culture, enliven our spirit, and fortify our way of life. The Irish American Heritage Month, we commemorate this special bond of friendship between the United States and Ireland, and we honor the extraordinary contributions of Irish American citizens past and present. During the 19th and 20th centuries, millions of Irish immigrants departed the rolling countryside of the Emerald Isle for the bustling cities of Boston, Chicago, and New York, leaving behind their homeland and embarking on a daring journey across the Atlantic in hopes of a new future and a new frontier, and an opportunity for one that's better. Fought for the freedom on the battlefield. These Irish Americans have done that, served in the halls of government, and pioneered legendary businesses, leaving a lasting mark on their communities and national identity. The United States and Ireland also enjoy a great economic tie and a friendship shared in democracy, a commitment to the timeless values of faith, family, and freedom. And as my administration works to correct trade imbalances with the European Union, our historic relationship with Ireland presents an opportunity to advance those fairer trade policies and stronger investment opportunities that benefit both nations. And to this day, the Irish Americans are known for some of the toughest, most driven, devoted people on the face of the earth. Their faith in God, love of family, and indelible commitment to our national promise continue to inspire citizens all across our country. This Irish American Heritage Month, we salute the undying resilience and resolve of the Irish American community, pay tribute to their tremendous achievements, and pledge to forge a future that strengthens our shared values, deepens our traditions, and restores America as a glorious nation under God. Now, therefore, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, by the powers vested in me, do hereby proclaim March 2025 as Irish American Heritage Month. And again, honors all of those contributions, ceremonies, celebrations, whether it be in church, in the workplace, of Irish Americans and our forebearers back in the Emerald Isle. So thank you to President Trump for putting out that proclamation. I'm a proud Irish American myself, and we just learned recently that Matthew Alvarez, my esteemed colleague, also Irish. So that was fun to have that, and we'll be wearing our green come St. Patrick's Day, roughly, 10 days from now. But March, one of my favorite months here on the calendar, and that's the thing that President Trump does so well, whether it's proclamations like this or the speech you saw on Tuesday night. He is focused on honoring all Americans, and that's why it's somewhat disheartening to me when I hear from the far left that he's somehow anti-immigrant. He's married to an immigrant who came to this country, who is an extraordinary, if not the best first lady we have ever had. He honors the Irish in that beautiful proclamation as well. The main difference is he just does not want illegal immigration taking place. He doesn't want people to come here and commit crime, as we've seen with Laken Riley's family, or Jocelyn Nongary, Rachel Morin as well, who was a beautiful mother, 37, mom of 5, who lost her life just simply jogging, losing her life to a criminal illegal alien. That should not happen in America, and it almost seems as if there's a broken record having to be spoken over and over and over again in regards to these problems. But President Trump remains committed to keeping America safe and making America great again. And we here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live want to bring you, again, that unbridled access to everything happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or on Capitol Hill, throughout the Beltway, and also in the rest of the country outside of the Beltway, what might just be happening. And we do know that since President Trump took office on January 20th of this year, things have been getting better. Things are safer. We have a secure border. It continues to be completed with the Marines and the Army Corps of Engineers working diligently on that wall, or even Border Czar Tom Homan and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem going on the raids with ICE to remove criminal illegal aliens. So we will keep our watch on this and bring this all to you, the American people, so ultimately you can make up your mind on these crucial issues. Today, some interesting news coming out. Fort Bragg will be renamed from Fort Liberty, and it's timely due because everything that happened over the course of the last few years, whether it was BLM or COVID, really took revisionist history surrounding our Confederate generals. And part of the far destroying things that can harken back to the Kingdom of Bavaria and German history dating back for centuries, similar to what the left in modern day does. And one of their missions has been to erase history altogether. We have to remember that history, whether good, bad, or ugly, and I, for one, believe that although Braxton Bragg, he has a mixed record as a general. In fact, he was considered one of the worst generals on the Confederate side for the number of battles and engagements that he lost against the Union. But this was a gentleman from the Tar Heel state of North Carolina, someone who, although they had differences with the Union, had that connection to West Point and love for country and love for the Bill of Rights as well. They made mistakes, there's no question about that, but in order to know the history we came from, we must examine it and honor it. And that's why today, Fort Bragg being renamed from Fort Liberty. And it's something that I think President Trump has had, really a mission set to complete, because we've seen this also with Denali up in Alaska. He's renaming that to Mount McKinley because, as he mentioned, William McKinley, a great president, a president who wanted to enact tariffs and was able to do so, gone too soon, of course, dying from an assassin's bullet, and brought about the presidency of Theodore Roosevelt as a result. But William McKinley was really the master of tariffs as well, bringing in so much money into this country that we were able to fund our schools with the blue ribbon systems. And if you go back to his tenure and on to the late 19th century, we were able to really have the most wealth in this country when you put it up against the GDP and up against all of our other wealth to date. So something that President Trump has looked for inspiration to use those tariffs as he continues on with his presidency. We'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, mypillow.com/RSBN. The great Mike Lindell. We know that he is putting on a mega sale. Whether it's that My Cross, you could save 30% on that. How about the My Towels? You can get a 6-pack for $29.98 or the flannel sheets for $44.98 as well. But with over 2,000 different items on the website, 80% off of everything, Mike Lindell has provided a great option for you, the American people, to purchase really great products, all American made, or from great places around the world that are experts in the Giza Dream Sheets, for example, from the Mediterranean. So that's some of the best cotton in the world that he's been able to use to bring you at a low and affordable price. Mr. Mike Lindell, a great champion of the First Amendment and also the election integrity and the Bill of Rights as well. So we thank him for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, mypillow.com/RSBN. And how about Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN. Such an important thing to do this time of year. Get ready to make sure you're not paying any back taxes or settle them now, because April 15th is right around the corner. And how scary is that for us, as we have 88,000 new IRS agents thanks to the Biden administration, but President Trump has pledged to send some of them to the border to help the Marines and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. But in the meantime, give our Patriot friends, our experts over at Tax Network USA Incorporated, a call, because they are experts at property taxes, state and federal income taxes as well, and can help you to really streamline what might be a headache of a process. No one likes to do this with thinking about tax season, but it's good to get ahead of it before April 15th. tnusa.com/RSBN. Give them a call today. And we are, and we will show you some of those executive orders, throw those to those now with President Trump signing in the Oval Office.
Today we're delighted to be joined by Rodolphe Sade, the Chairman and CEO of CMA CGM, one of the largest shipping companies in the world, probably number 2 in the world, probably going to be number 1 in the not too distant future, knowing him. They employ over 160,000 employees. They have 750 major container vessels worldwide. And I'm thrilled to announce that he's going to be investing $20 billion into the United States because of the election results, which comes along with a lot of other things like great protections and other things. This is about shipping logistics, infrastructure, and terminals, which will create an estimated 10,000 new jobs in America. It's so important because it's about shipping. We lost our way for many years. We haven't done anything. We used to build a ship a day, and now we essentially don't build ships. We're going to start that, and we're going to be announcing next week or the week after a massive new program for building very large, the largest ships in the world. and it'll have to do with incentives, taxes. They'll be coming from all over the world, just like they are with cars, with what we've done with tariffs. And we have at least 7 new major car plants that are going to be starting very shortly because of what we're doing with the tariffs, which will primarily start on April the 2nd. Most of the tariffs go in April the 2nd. Right now we have some temporary ones and small ones on relatively small, although it's a lot of money, having to do with Mexico and Canada. But the predominant tariffs they'll be reciprocal in nature. They'll be going on April the 2nd, so we'll be talking about that. It'll be a big game changer for our country because we've been ripped off by every country in the world. And now whatever they charge us 150, 200%, that we charge them nothing. So whatever they charge us, we're going to charge them. And there'll be no getting out of it. So we look forward to April 2nd. I've been looking forward to that date for a long time. I had it as April 1st, but I didn't want to be hit for April Fool's Day. I'm a very superstitious person. So we made it April 2nd. It probably cost us a lot of money doing that, but it's okay. I feel better about it. And that'll be something very big. But I'd like to ask Rodolphe if you'd say a few words, please, about what you're going to do and also about the possibility of shipbuilding in our country. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, indeed, we are CMA CGM, one of the leaders in shipping and logistics around the world. We are very enthusiastic about this big announcement of today. We are investing $20 billion in shipping and logistics. This means the creation of 10,000 new American jobs. We're also looking at investing in shipbuilding of container vessels, and we most probably will be making also announcement in the next coming weeks. And we would like also, Mr. President, to go for more U.S. flag vessels, and we will go from 10 that we operate today to 30 U.S. flag ships, and hopefully doing more in the months to come. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, and congratulations on your great success. He's built with his father, before him, built one of the great shipping empires of the world. And that is, I never heard 750. That sounds like a lot to me, doesn't it, huh?
It is, Mr. President.
That's a fantastic company. Congratulations. Really
Thank
great
you.
job. And a real honor to have you. Why is it that more people don't have American flags? They seem to have Panamanian flags and Liberian flags. They don't seem to have a lot of American flags.
But this will change, Mr. President. You will have more ships with U.S. flag as we move forward, and you can count on us to do as much as we can.
That's very good. It's true. Other countries take advantage of us even on that. So we're going to be changing that around, and I appreciate you coming up and even bringing it to our attention. It's really a great thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Appreciate it. Will, could you come over? We're going to
Yes, sir.
sign some executive orders.
Sir, your administration has made it a priority both to end lawfare and the weaponization of government, and also to hold those who have engaged in lawfare accountable. One of the law firms that has been involved in that is called Perkins Coie. That's also a law firm that has engaged in unlawful DEI practices. This executive order will suspend security.
And I've watched it take place.
This executive order will suspend security clearances and access to certain federal resources for that law firm, and also launch a holistic review of unlawful DEI practices at some of the nation's largest law firms.
This is an absolute honor to sign. What they've done is just terrible. It's weaponization. You could say weaponization against a political opponent, and it should never be allowed to happen again. And you're looking at about 15 different firms?
That or more, sir, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. One of the tools the left has consistently used to frustrate good government policies has been the use of injunctions and temporary restraining orders. Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 65C allows for essentially a demand for an injunction bond for folks who are seeking temporary restraining orders and injunctions to post a bond before they're allowed to proceed in court. This presidential memorandum would order the Department of Justice, its litigating components, to seek those injunction bonds whenever someone tries to challenge our policies in court, so that when they end up losing in court, and we believe that they will end up losing in court, that they can be held financially responsible for the disruption to federal activities that their actions have caused.
Right? Something they've wanted to do a long time, right? They've been looking to do this for years,
Yes, sir.
and why they just never got it.
This is a rule that's been on the books for a very long time. The Department of Justice has been very inconsistent in seeking these bonds.
From a legal standpoint, really a very big thing.
Thank you, sir. In order to protect American car manufacturers and American farmers, we have two modifications to the IEEPA tariffs that have already been announced against Canada and Mexico. This first order relates to Canada. Essentially, what it will allow for is the flow of parts and subassembly products into America to allow American car manufacturers to continue building cars. It basically excludes USMCA-eligible goods from existing tariffs, and also in order to help our farmers at this crucial time of year, we're going to be reducing the tariff imposed on Canadian potash from 25% to 10%. So this is a modification to our tariff regime to protect American car manufacturers and American farmers.
It basically makes it more fair for our car manufacturers during the short-term period before April 2nd. April 2nd is a little bit different. That will be much more significant. But during this interim period between now and April 2nd, this makes it much more favorable for our American car manufacturers. Okay. Can you see that, Peter? Look, nice to be tall, Peter, right?
I see right over.
You can see it so nice. That's why he's such a gentleman. He doesn't have to rush. Okay.
And this is the same just for Mexico, sir, the previous one.
Same thing for
Canada.
Mexico.
That's
One for
exactly right.
Canada, one for Mexico.
Yes, sir.
They've been in the news lately, haven't they? And I spoke to the president of Mexico, wonderful woman, today, and we helped them out with the problem they were having to do with the tariffs, short-term tariffs. And we had a very good conversation. Also, we discussed drugs, and they've been working much harder lately. Do you notice that? On people coming in and drugs, and we've made tremendous progress on both.
President Trump, what's your thought about why the markets are so spooked? Do you think they don't like the tariffs, or do they not like the uncertainty with some of the changes and the carve-outs?
Well, a lot of them are globalist countries and companies that won't be doing as well because we're taking back things that have been taken from us many years ago. We've been treated very unfairly as a country. We protect everybody. We do everything for all these countries. And a lot of these are globalist in nature. You know, they have, if you're outside of the United States, you know, it's going to be a little bit different. We just weren't treated right. We were ripped off as a country. I've been saying it for a long time. And I did it to a certain extent in the first administration, but with COVID coming in, we had to focus on that toward the end. But we had the greatest economy in history in the first administration, and I think we'll do even better now. But this is something that we have to do. There'll always be a little short-term interruption. I don't think it's going to be big, but the countries and companies that have been ripping us aren't particularly happy with what I'm doing. But the United States will be very happy. And, you know, our farmers are going to be very happy. And, again, there'll be disruption. But in the end, I said it before with China, we signed an unbelievable deal with China, $50 billion in purchases, and we're doing great. Biden, however, when he came in, they never enforced that deal. So that's the only thing that basically you have globalist companies that have been ripping us off that won't be able to rip us off any longer. I think that's what the big charge is.
Have you been influenced, some of these exemptions that have been announced and some of these temporary delays, have you been influenced in those decisions because of the market reaction?
Well, there were no delays at all. No, nothing to do with the market. I'm not even looking at the market because long term, the United States will be very strong with what's happening here. Now, these are countries and companies, foreign companies, that have been ripping us off, and no president did anything about it until I came along, and then I did a lot about it. You know, we took in tariffs from China $600 billion. Nobody else took in 10 cents from China. They never did. But when COVID came along, we had to focus on COVID. We did a great job. We got rid of that. We ended up handing over with a market that was higher than it was previous to COVID coming in. But this is very much about companies and countries that have ripped off this country, our beloved USA, and they're not going to be ripping us off anymore. So, you know, I think that has an impact on the market.
Mr. President. Sir, this is a slate of nominees that's been prepared by the Presidential Personnel Office. It includes a number of sub-cabinet level appointments, a number of your ambassadors that have been previously announced, and also, crucially, given the administration's concerted effort to focus on violent crime, it includes a number of U.S. attorneys in major cities that have real crime problems.
Okay. Some very good people, too.
Thank you, sir. And then we have a number of ceremonial proclamations that Lindsay Halligan is going to.
So two very special proclamations, the first of which is a proclamation that proclaims March 2025 as Women's History Month in honor of all the wonderful women in your administration, all the wonderful women in America, and in honor of everything you've done for women and this administration has done for women in just, what, a month and a half? So.
Yeah, we've done a lot, and women have done a lot for us, right? This is an honor. We have a wonderful woman here, Maria Bartiromo.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you, Maria.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thanks for all that you're doing for women.
Thank you. She's going to do an interview of me later. Maybe I shouldn't do this interview. I should be like Biden, not do any interviews. That's great. Women, we love you.
We love you too, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent.
So the second one is a proclamation proclaiming March 2025 as Irish American Heritage Month in honor of, to commemorate our amazing friendship between America and Ireland, and to just honor all of the Irish Americans. And I'm a little bit biased because I'm American and Irish, but
Good. Good. Well, great people. Yeah, great
St.
people.
Patrick's Day is coming up as well.
And they voted for me in heavy numbers, so I like them even more. You have to like it. You know, you're not supposed to, but you have to like that. All right. So for the Irish American people, proclamation. Okay. Thanks, Lindsay.
Mr. President, your envoy, Steve Witkoff, told us a little while ago that if Hamas does not release hostages, that the U.S. and Israel could take some action. What does that mean in your eyes? Is that military action? Would you join strikes with Israel?
What are you going to find out? I had the honor of spending a lot of time yesterday with quite a few of the people that we got out, and I can't believe how badly treated they were, really badly treated. Stories that you wouldn't even believe. Some of it was documented. Some of it was so bad you couldn't really, I don't think you can put it on. And it's a shame. And they said one thing, they have 59 hostages, of which many of them are killed. They want to know if we could just continue. They said without us, look, Biden wasn't able to get anybody out. We came along and they started releasing. But we have 59 left, of which 24 are living. The rest are dead. And I put out a statement. It's sort of self-explanatory, I think. But somebody's going to have to get a lot rougher than they're getting. It's a shame. And those 24 that are living, because they were with them just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, depending on when they got out. But they said they're in very bad shape.
You spoke today with your cabinet members and Elon Musk.
I did.
What did you tell them in regards to Elon Musk and his authorities to carry out actions?
We had a great meeting. We had Elon and we had some of the representatives for the business reps. We also had most of the cabinet members, not all of them. It doesn't really pertain to all of them, but many of them. And I thought it was a really good meeting. It was about cutting because everybody knows the country's way out of control in terms of the number of people. We have many people that don't work. We have many people probably that aren't even living that are getting checks. And we're finding all of that out, and it's being reported. We're going to save hundreds of billions of dollars. We've already saved a lot. And parts of it are contracts that are expired that we're paying on. Many crazy things that, you can see it happening. It shouldn't happen, but you can see it happening. You see a lot of it being put out. But the other thing I think most important for today, I want the cabinet members to keep good people. Now, I don't want to see a big cut where a lot of good people are cut. I want the cabinet members to keep the
And just a minor tech issue there. We're working on that to bring you back to all those exciting executive orders. But President Trump, clearly working on the American auto industry and proclaiming that his care for women, his care for Irish Americans, his care for really all of America as he seeks to make it great again. And we seek to bring you the latest news here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live from Auburn, Alabama, covering everything in the Beltway and outside of the Beltway. And President Trump with another busy day as he is less than 50 days in the White House. And can you believe the amount of work he's accomplished in the last few days? We're going to throw it back now to those EOs.
We had a meeting, and I said, I want the cabinet members go first, keep all the people you want, everybody that you need. And it would be better if they were there for 2 years instead of 2 weeks, because in 2 years they'll know the people better. But I want them to do the best job they can. When we have good people, that's precious. That's very important, and we want them to keep the good people. And so we're going to be watching them, and Elon and the group are going to be watching them. And if they can cut, it's better. And if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
So, Mr. President, is that a reflection that you think Doge and Elon Musk have been moving too quickly?
No, I think they've done an amazing job. They've done an amazing job, and look at what they found. I read it the other night in the speech. I mean, they found these things where billions of dollars has been poured down the drain to things. That's not about people. That's about contracts where billions and billions of dollars was just thrown out the window. It probably got kickbacks. I'm sure there were tremendous kickbacks for the people that authorized those contracts. But no, Elon has been really teaching everybody about the numbers that you can do. But what I want the numbers, but I also want to keep the good people. We want to get rid of the people that aren't working, that aren't showing up, and have a lot of problems. And so they're working together with Elon, and I think we're doing a really great job. We're cutting it down. We have to for the sake of our country. You can't have that kind of fat. It's bloat, and like nobody's ever seen before, where you need 20,000 and they have 120,000 people, and you just don't need that many. And it happens with companies, and it happens with governments, I guess. You could go to a lot of governments, you'd see the same thing. But we're trying to get it down. We want to be able, next year, we could balance the budget. I think there's a good chance we could balance the budget next year. We have a lot of good things happening. Plus, we have a lot of revenue things happening, like today with the shipbuilding. And this gentleman behind me is going to create a lot of jobs. And he's about the biggest there is in the world. We had the biggest chip maker in the world here a few days ago. He's going to be spending $200 billion on building plants. We're not giving him any money to build it either. It's not, that chip act is ridiculous, where the Biden thing, where they give billions of dollars to people that have nothing but money. They're not going to spend that money. They're just taking that money. we're giving nothing. They're coming in because of the tariffs, because they don't want to pay the tariffs, and they're opening up big. So, but with respect to people, I said, I want to cut the people, but I want to keep the good people.
President, tariffs, sir, can you walk us through the next steps on this? Steel and aluminum tariffs are due to kick in next week on Canada, Mexico, and every other country. Are those going to be modified as well?
No, those aren't modified. Those are happening next week, and the big one will be on April 2nd when reciprocal tariffs. So if India or China or any of the countries that really, India is a very high tariff nation. I'll tell you what's a high tariff nation is Canada. Canada charges us 250% for our milk product and other product, and a tremendous tariff on lumber and things as such. And yet we don't need their lumber. We have more lumber than they do. We don't need Canada's lumber. So what I'm doing is I'll be signing an executive order freeing up our forests so that we're allowed to take down trees and make a lot of money and then reharvest trees. Also, we're cutting fire divides. A fire divide is a 50-yard to 70-yard swath where the trees can't, it's long enough so trees don't burn forever until you can get them out. And those trees can be sold and made a lot of money with. So, but we'll be doing that. We don't need trees from Canada. We don't need cars from Canada. We don't need energy from Canada. We don't need anything from Canada. So where we can be self-sustaining, which is in most things. Look, we have more oil and gas than anybody. Our forests are massive, massive forests. We're just not allowed to use them because of the environmental lunatics that stopped us. So I'm going to be freeing that up very shortly so that we don't have to go to other countries to buy lumber. Why should we be buying lumber from other countries, paying tariffs, paying big prices, extraordinary prices, and we have lumber. We have the best lumber. Go ahead.
And this USMCA exemption that you're essentially announcing today for this 1 month?
It's just a modification, short term, because I didn't want to hurt the American. It would have hurt the American car companies if I did that.
Would you consider the same sort of exemption or pause for the auto tariffs you're talking about next month?
We're not looking at that, no.
You're not
No, we're not looking at that, no. No.
Revoking
Yep.
TPS for the Ukrainians who live here in the U.S.?
What about
Are
it?
you considering revoking the TPS status for the more than 200,000 Ukrainians who live here in the U.S.?
What are you saying? I don't-
The Ukrainians that are here in the
Yeah,
U.S.,
yeah.
they're under a TPS status.
On GPS?
TPS, temporary status.
temporary-
Oh, I thought you said GPS.
TPS.
Yeah.
There was some news saying that they were going to be revoked and they were going to be deported from the country. Are you considering that for the
Well, we're not looking to hurt anybody, and we're certainly not looking to hurt them. And I'm looking at that, and there were some people that think that's appropriate, and some people don't. And I'll be making a decision pretty soon. Okay?
President Trump said,
But we're not looking to hurt them,
President Trump said,
especially Ukrainians. They've gone through a lot. Yeah, Peter.
the clocks are going to spring forward on Sunday. When are you going to get rid of daylight savings time?
Okay, are you ready? So, this should be the easiest one of all, but it's a 50-50 issue. And if something's a 50-50 issue, it's hard to get excited about it. I assume people would like to have more light later, but some people want to have more light earlier because they don't want to take their kids to school in the dark. And it's a little bit one way, but it's very much a 50-50 issue. And it's something I can do, but a lot of people like it one way, a lot of people like it the other way. It's very even. And usually I find when that's the case, what else do we have to do?
And I got to ask, because you were talking about this in your joint address, you were talking about Butler. It's been 7 months. Why do you think we don't know more about the guy who shot you in the ear?
Yeah, well, and the second one with all of his cell phones. So I want to find the answers. I've told them. In fact, today I said, I want to find, we can no longer blame Biden for that one. He should have released that a long time ago. So they are giving me a report next week sometime, and I do believe I want to release the report. A lot of people have asked that question. You had one who had 3 apps, 2 of which were foreign, supposedly, and who has the biggest white shoe law firm in Pennsylvania, even though they don't live in necessarily a white shoe area. What's that all about? His law, the law firm. The other one had 7 or 6 cell phones. And I don't have 6 cell phones. And why would somebody have 6 cell phones? So we're going to be releasing a report on that soon, Peter.
But based on what you're saying right there, the lack of information and the data points that you just gave, does that make you think that there's some part of that there's some bigger?
It could be. Well, it makes other people think that. It makes me think it a little bit too. I say, when you have 3 apps and 2 of them are foreign, and you had an FBI that wouldn't report on it, they didn't want to say why, I would say that could be suspicious. And then on the second assassin, you had, and by the way, I have to tell you, Secret Service did a great job on that by spotting him. But on the second one, he had 6 cell phones. That's a lot of cell phones. And a couple of them had some strange markings on them. So, yeah, I want to find out, and I would be willing to release it. I mean, maybe there's a reason that we shouldn't, so I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis, but yeah, I would be very willing to release that. I'd like to see it. I want to see it myself, Peter. Not only you, I want to see that one myself.
Mr. President,
may I?
Yes.
President Macron yesterday said that France was ready to offer its nuclear protection to other European countries. What do you make of it? And in this case, would the U.S. also maintain a nuclear umbrella for European countries?
Well, France is also willing to put soldiers into Ukraine for safety reasons if we can get it. I will say that we've made a lot of progress with Ukraine and a lot of progress with Russia over the last couple of days. And it'd be great to bring that to an end so we don't have to talk that way about nuclear. It'd be great if everybody would get rid of their nuclear weapons. We have Russia and us have by far the most. China will have an equal amount within 4 or 5 years. And it would be great if we could all denuclearize, because the power of nuclear weapons is crazy. It is crazy. And I was very far along a process with Russia, despite the Russia hoax, which didn't make it easy. It was a total hoax, a total rigged hoax by some bad people. But despite that, I was very close to having a program with Russia, denuclearization, and we're going to get China. I spoke to President Xi about it, and he would have been very happy to have gone along with it. But bad things happened, like an election that was rigged happened, and so we had to come back 4 years later. But I would very much like to start those talks. The opposite of what you say, the denuclearization would be incredible.
Mr. President, on the auto tariffs that you were talking about, I know yesterday you spoke with the big 3. Did you tell them that no more exemptions were on the way, and what was the reaction?
I told them, that's it. This was a short-term deal. And they came back to me yesterday. They said, could we have some help on the tariffs because of the speed? And I said, look, I'm going to do it, but that's it. Don't come back to me after the April 2nd. I don't want to hear from you after April 2nd. We're not going to be doing it anymore. I want to help them.
What was their response?
They didn't complain, but I helped them short-term during this short-term transition. April 2nd is going to be a very big day for America.
Mr. President, my understanding is that the longstanding U.S. policy is that we do not negotiate with terrorists. So how did you come to the decision to send somebody from your team to negotiate with Hamas?
We are having discussions with Hamas. We are helping Israel in those discussions because we're talking about Israeli hostages. And we're not doing anything in terms of Hamas. We're not giving cash. We're not giving $6 billion like you hear other administrations give. In fact, I got 59 hostages out, and we gave nothing. In 59, we gave nothing, not including what's going on with Hamas. I mean, I consider that something where we're helping Israel for the most part. We had a couple of hostages, as you know. We got a couple of hostages out, American hostages.
Mr. President,
But certainly, Peter, you have to negotiate. There's a difference between negotiating and paying. We want to get these people out. If you would have seen the people yesterday, maybe you did, I don't know, but if you would have seen them, the way they spoke about their captivity, it was unbelievable. It's terrible.
Are you thinking about making any changes to NATO where a NATO country gets attacked, but they're not paying enough dues, so the United States doesn't defend them?
Well, I've said that to them. I said, if you're not going to pay, we're not going to defend. I said that 7 years ago. And because of that, they paid hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, if you're not going to pay your bills, we're not going to defend you. And it also went for the attack. But if they got attacked, they said, well, does that mean you won't defend us? I said, are you current or are you delinquent? They said, if we were delinquent, would you? I said, nope, I would not. And because of that, as you know, hundreds of billions of dollars came into NATO. You wouldn't have NATO right now if I weren't there. And your previous Secretary General has said that. He said he's never seen anything like it. When I came to NATO, when I first had my first meeting, I noticed that people weren't paying their bills at all. And I said I should wait till my second meeting, and I did. And I brought that up. And I said, if you don't pay your bills, we're not going to participate. We're not going to protect you. And when I said that, as soon as I said that, it was amazing how the money came in. The money came in, and now they have money. But even now, it's not enough. It's really not enough. They should be paying more.
Mr. President, question on the investment, sir. You've overseen about $2 trillion worth of domestic private sector investments come in just about 2 months. This is the newest one. It comes after your announcement of a new shipbuilding office at the White House during your joint session to Congress. Can you talk about why this is important, not only for national security, but to continue the renaissance of domestic manufacturing?
Well, we have to maintain a strong country. We have to maintain, and we want to pay off debt. We have a lot of debt, but that'll start coming off quickly when this all comes around. Look, we've been supporting the whole world. You mentioned NATO and you mentioned other things. We've been supporting the whole world. When I first came in, we were paying almost 100% of NATO. NATO it was crazy. We were supporting NATO. We were paying the bills for other countries. And yet those same countries, mostly European, the European countries were ripping us off in trade. They won't take our cars. They wouldn't take our agricultural product. They wouldn't take anything. Yet we were taking their cars by the millions, Mercedes and BMW and Volkswagen, all of them. We were taking their cars. They weren't taking it. We were taking their farm products. They weren't taking ours. It's a total ripoff. And yet we were protecting them by giving them the money. And, that adds up to a bad number at the end of a lot of years. And that's what happened. And now it's time for this country to stop being ripped off. I had that done very much in the first administration, but then we had to focus on other things at the very end with COVID. But we had the greatest economy in history. I think we're going to redo it here, but even better. And I wanted to do what we're doing now in the first term, but we had so many other things to do. We had to fix the border, which we did. We had to fix our military. We rebuilt our military. We completely rebuilt the military, only to watch Biden give so much of it away to Afghanistan, if you can believe it. It's not even believable. It's not even believable what he did. The damage that man did or that administration did to this country is frankly not even believable. And in particular, allowing millions and millions of people to come into our country. Many of them were murderers and drug dealers and gang members and people from prison for very heinous crimes. For him to allow those people into our country, and now we're spending tremendous amounts of time and effort. Nikki and Tom Homan, who's doing an unbelievable job, but we shouldn't have to be spending anything on that. We had the safest border ever. Now we have actually, as you saw, the numbers just came out, where we have actually the lowest numbers in the history of our country. But we shouldn't have had to do that. What we're doing now is we're looking for murderers. Can you believe it? We're looking for murderers because thousands of murderers, some about 50%, killed more than one person. One killed 5 or 7. And we're looking for those people right now. We shouldn't have to be looking for them.
President Trump, on Peter's question, are you going to make that policy, U.S. policy, that the U.S. wouldn't defend NATO countries that don't pay?
Well, I think it's common sense, right? If they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. No, I'm not going to defend them. I got into a lot of heat when I said that. You said, oh, he's violating NATO. And, the biggest problem I have with NATO, I really, I know the guys very well. They're friends of mine. But if the United States was in trouble and we called them, we said, we got a problem. France. We got a problem. A couple of others I won't mention. Do you think they're going to come and protect us? They're supposed to. I'm not so sure.
So
You know, with
why
Japan, with
stay
Japan we have a deal, which is a very interesting one. And I love Japan. We have a great relationship with Japan, but we have an interesting deal with Japan that we have to protect them, but they don't have to protect us. Do you know that? That's the way the deal reads. We have to protect Japan. And by the way, they make a fortune with us economically. There's another case. But we have to protect Japan, but under no circumstances do they have to protect us. I actually ask, who makes these deals? Yeah, Peter?
Well, so why stay in NATO at all?
I view NATO as potentially good, but you gotta get some good thinking in NATO. It's very unfair what's been happening. Until I came along, we were paying close to 100% of NATO. So think of it. We're paying 100% of their military, and they're screwing us on trade.
And when Zelensky inevitably comes back to the White House, what do you expect from him? And do you think you'll see him in a necktie?
Well, I think what's going to happen is Ukraine wants to make a deal because I don't think they have a choice. I also think that Russia wants to make a deal because in a different way that only I know, they have no choice either.
Are you still thinking of going to Saudi Arabia and meeting with Putin about this?
I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm going to Saudi Arabia.
Mr. President,
They've been very, I've made a deal with Saudi Arabia where, because normally you'd go to UK first, and last time I went to Saudi Arabia, they put up $450 billion. You know that, right? You were there. We had American companies that took in $450 billion. I said, well, this time they've gotten richer. We've all gotten older. So I said, I'll go if you pay $1 trillion to American companies, meaning the purchase over a 4-year period of $1 trillion. And they've agreed to do that. So I'm going to be going there, and I have a great relationship with them, and they've been very nice. But they're going to be spending a lot of money to American companies for buying military equipment and a lot of other things.
Is that a trip in the near future?
Probably over the next month and a half. Yes.
Mr. President, you told us a couple of weeks ago that you were looking to speak with President Xi of China. That hasn't happened. How come? What are you waiting for?
I have spoken to him, yeah.
Since that last phone call?
I don't want to say that, but I have spoken to him. Yeah, please.
Yeah, Mr. President,
I have a great relationship with President Xi.
But you've spoken to him.
It was hurt because of COVID.
Thank you, Mr.
That's why I don't call it the China virus anymore. I said, please don't call it the China virus.
But to be clear, you've spoken to him since January 17th?
I don't want to say that, but I have spoken to him.
Thank you,
And
Mr. President.
I speak to him a lot.
Regarding this executive order you signed revoking security clearances at Perkins Coie, do you think there should be more steps like this to be taken against other people involved in the Russia collusion?
I do, but that's going to be up ultimately to the Attorney General and various other people.
Absolutely. Just as a follow-up, the other night, we saw Democrats' behavior during your joint address to Congress.
Yeah.
Do you think it shows just how out of touch they are with the American people, especially given that 79%, according to a CBS poll, approved of your speech?
I love this guy. Who are you with?
My name's Nick Gilbertson with Breitbart News.
I see. I really like your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Sir, regarding the executive order.
The answer is just, Nick, just to, and I know your name very well. Good job, you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, the answer is I thought it was very embarrassing for the Democrats what happened the other night. And that's not said for any other reason other than it's obvious, it's fact. Even CNN fake news said that. They came out and they said it. And worse than CNN is MSDNC, which is the worst. And the good news is very few people watch them anymore. They have lost such credibility. And frankly, what Nicole Wallace said, I've never been a fan of hers, and she's not very talented. But I'll tell you, what she said the other day about that young man is disgraceful. She should be forced to resign. And Rachel Maddow should be forced to resign. Nobody watches her anyway. I don't know if it's not possible they pay her as much money as I hear, but certainly she's lost all credibility, both of them. But what they said the other day, they should be forced to resign about that young person who is suffering greatly. Thank you, Nick.
Will you extend, if a TikTok deal is not made on the timeline you gave, will you extend that?
Probably, yeah.
You will? Okay.
I think, look, we have a lot of interest in TikTok. And China is going to play a role. And so hopefully China will approve of the deal. But they're going to play a role. But we have a lot of interest in TikTok.
How long will you extend it, and how close are you to a deal?
Well, we'll see. But if I need, I don't, right now we have at least another month, so we don't need an extension. But if I needed an extension, I'd probably get it extended. Yeah,
Our country is
Mr. President, regarding the executive orders, there was talk that you might sign one winding down the education department.
Which department?
The education department. Are you having second thoughts on that?
No. I want to bring the schools. I want to bring the schools back to the states. And I've said it 100 times. We're ranked at the bottom of the list, and yet we spend more. We're ranked #1 for cost per student. We're ranked at the bottom of the list in education. And I know if I bring it back to Iowa, Indiana, Idaho, all these great states, I think I could say 40 states. I want to bring it back. 10 states won't be perfect. 5 states will be probably not so good. But they will be every bit as good as Norway and Denmark and Sweden and all of the states that are rated at the top. If you tell me about Indiana and some of these great states that run really well, Iowa, you tell me about those states, and if they run their own education, they're going to do a lot better than somebody sitting in Washington, D.C. that couldn't care less about the pupils out in the Midwest.
When do you think that might be signed then? When would you sign that order?
Well, I want to just do it. I mean, we're starting the process. We're trying to get the schools back into the states. Let the states run the schools. And I'll tell you, you'll see something, it's gonna blow your mind. It'll be run so well. The school system. And I also believe in school choice, but that will take care of itself.
A follow-up to that, Mr. President. If the education department were eliminated, how would you see sort of what department, what agency would handle student loans and the other types of federal grants?
That would be brought into either Treasury or Small Business Administration or Commerce. And we've actually had that discussion today. I don't think the education should be handling the loans. That's not their business. I think it'll be brought into small business maybe. Kelly really liked it and really would like to do it. So the loans would be brought into a group where they really do that. And I think that is, by the way, the most complicated thing in moving. But it's very simple if you do that.
And the same for like federal grants.
Rejected your plan to move out more than 2 million people out of Gaza. What's your reaction to that and to Egypt's plan and to this meeting that happened?
Out of Gaza?
Yeah.
I think that Gaza's a mess. And I think that Gaza could be good. I think it's got to be run properly. But right now, Gaza is an absolute mess, and it has been for many, many years and decades. Yeah, Peter, did you have one more?
I did, yeah. They have these 2 Starliner astronauts stuck in space for 8 months. Have you spoken to them?
They left them alone. Biden left them up there.
And what do you know about that?
I know everything about it. I said, we have 2 astronauts that are stuck in space. I have asked Elon, I said, do me a favor. Can you get him out? He said, yes. He is preparing to go up, I think, in 2 weeks.
What do you know about how this went down? Because he's saying that the Biden White House was offered some kind of SpaceX rocket to go get these guys, and they said no.
That's what I heard. I can't tell you that, but that's what I heard. But Biden was embarrassed by what happened, and he said, leave them up there. I would have said, if you're embarrassed, you got to get them out. Elon is right now preparing a ship to go up and get them.
I'm sure that they will see this in space. What is your message?
We love you, and we're coming up to get you, and you shouldn't have been up there so long. The most incompetent president in our history has allowed that to happen to you, but this president won't let it happen. We're going to get them out. We're coming up to get you. I've authorized Elon. I said, can you get them out? Because, they've been left up there. I hope they like each other, but maybe they'll love each other. I don't know. But they've been left up there. Think of it. And I see the woman with the wild hair, good solid head of hair she's got. There's no kidding. There's no games with her hair. But, and there's a danger up there, too. They can have some failures up there that would be very bad. You got to get them out. So I've authorized Elon a week ago. I said, you know, we have two people up there that Biden and Kamala left up there, and he knows it very well. I said, are you equipped to get him? He said, yeah, he's got a Starship, and they're preparing it right now. And so Elon is going to go up and get him. Should I go on that journey just to be on the ship when we stop?
If that's an option, yes.
I should do it. Oh, that's terrible. I thought he liked me. I thought he liked me. I thought, Maria, should I do it?
Well, you should then come.
Stay here.
Maria likes me better.
President Trump, you should then come back from space.
Well, when they come back, I'll greet them. How about that? No, we're going to get him out. I've authorized Elon Musk to go and get him, and he's prepared to do so.
Mr. President, what are you making of the market sell-off this week?
I think it's globalists that see how rich our country's going to be, and they don't like it. You know, there's a big market out there. But again, they've been ripping off this country for years, and they're going to do great. Everyone's going to do great, but we can't let this continue to happen to America. Otherwise, we're not going to have a country any longer. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great. Thank you, Nick. Great.
I ran out.
That never happened with Biden.
I got no way.
I spoke to your father yesterday.
And welcome back to RSBN Live. I'm Robert McNeely from Auburn, Alabama, as we look at our beautiful Capitol Hill, a sunny day in Washington, D.C. Thank you to our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, Home Title Lock. Did you know that scammers can literally steal your home right out from under you? It's a scary thought, but the FBI calls it home stealing, and it's a growing real estate scam targeting homeowners. Now, here's how it works exactly. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, bring that to a recorder's office, and then just like that, your home is in their hands, and you might not know until that transfer happens. We'll start receiving cancelizations the canceled back documents and forfeitures and all these different foreclosure notices. And you just don't want to have that happen to you. So HometitleLock.com/RSBN can help you through this nightmare. And let me ask you, when was the last time you checked this? Because a lot of people, again, they don't stay on top of this, and then all of a sudden things like this happen. The HometitleLock.com $1 million triple lock protection plan helps keep your equity safe. So here's what you get: an immediate 24/7 monitoring of your property, urgent alerts if there are any changes that take place. And if the fraud should happen, their U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title at no additional cost. And here's the best part. I've teamed up with Home Title Lock to give you a free title history along with this report. So this is a $250 value for a personal title expert to come in just for signing up. So a great deal for you. Go to HometitleLock.com and use the promo code RSBN. Click the link in the description there and make sure to check out the $1 million advantage, the triple lock protection details that you will get on the website. HometitleLock.com/RSBN. Protect your equity and your peace of mind. And we're appreciative of all the sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. As we go to the redesignation of Fort Bragg in North Carolina, that is forthcoming today. As really, again, it's about looking at history for what it is, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and learning from that so we can be better people today, nearly 250 years after our original documents were presented to us, and a new nation born in 1776. And Braxton Bragg, an interesting history with him having gone to West Point, and many generals on both sides of the Union and the Confederacy did know each other personally, and that's why we can never let something like a civil war break out again. It was the bloodiest conflict in American history, the worst war for casualties, not only civilian but also military as well. And one of the most captivating films that I'm a fan of is Remember the Titans, really focused on the high school T.C. Williams in Virginia that went on to be a football powerhouse in Virginia. And of course, Denzel Washington's character, Coach Boone, taking them on a jog through Gettysburg College into those hallowed grounds where our soldiers are resting, and saying this was brother versus brother. This was filled with hatred and malice in their heart, and that's what led to their demise. May it not happen again. And he was just talking to his team of the tensions in the civil rights era of black versus white and how they needed to come together as an integrated school. And it was the strength in their diversity, not only in the difference of skin color, but in their thoughts. If you remember in that movie, Coach Boone, the character, has them get together and learn about one another. And that's what it takes. It's all about dialoguing. It's all about discussing, something the Democrats refused to do on Tuesday as they sat there. Only a handful of claps, not very many. They refused to even stand up for DJ Daniels, who was an 8-year-old boy, now 13, diagnosed with a rare brain tumor, only given 5 months to live. Now an honorary Houston, Texas police officer, but also an honorary Secret Service agent, thanks to President Trump being sworn in by Director Sean Curran. And you might have caught his lovely hug with him during that wonderful speech on Tuesday. So really an interesting time to be an American, to see the difference between where the parties are currently at. A Republican caucus so united. Only 8 years ago was Speaker Paul Ryan, a globalist in his own right, only would work with President Trump on tax reform. They got that done by the fall of 2017 going into winter. But then you see the Democrats, who are always against President Trump, have truly fallen victim to the Trump derangement syndrome that is out there, the hatred that took place. Representative Al Green being censured by the House of Representatives and ultimately removed by the Sergeant at Arms per the request of Speaker Johnson after having a chance to reach decorum, to sit back down in his chair. And he kept raising his cane, literally shaking it at President Trump, saying, "You don't belong here." It was a bizarre display. And the rest of the evening, you saw Democrats holding up those odd signs, lying, quite frankly, especially about Elon Musk and his service at Doge. But the fact that they could not stand up for Jonathan Dillard's widow, the fact that they could not stand up for Laken Riley's family, and the fact, again, that they couldn't stand up for DJ, a survivor of cancer, who simply wants to serve his country, among others as well. We saw Mark Fogel in the gallery, brought home from Russia by President Trump, accompanied by Steve Witkoff, the special mission envoy. An amazing evening Tuesday night was, with Mark's mother as well, who had reached out to President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, that initial time, July 13th, when we went there for another rally, and that fateful day where Corey Campetor's family forever changed as Corey lost his life, the hero firefighter, for shielding his family. And President Trump honoring all of these, what they call everyday Americans. But these everyday Americans, like you and me, great patriots who care so deeply about this country, who have had their crossroads with history really collide with bad, far-left liberal policies, but then President Trump bringing common sense in less than 50 days in office here in the White House. And we await the redesignation today of Fort Bragg in North Carolina. We know that President Trump will be on his way this evening, late afternoon, early evening, to Mar-a-Lago for, not only some R&R, but he's had these working weekends which take place. He gets a little bit of time for golf, which is fantastic, and something we like to encourage him to do if he's watching as well, because I know how much he likes hitting the links, and that's something I am looking forward to do as well. With the weather's kind of turning. It was great. It was beautiful here last week in Auburn. A little bit chilly this week, but the sun is shining just as it is there in Washington, D.C. And down south here in Auburn, we're starting to see some of those buds turning and some of the pollen now starting to hit the cars. So I'm sorry for those who have those sinus and allergy reactions to it, because it gets a bit rough. But it is a beautiful time of the year down in the southern United States. And if you're just joining us now, it's almost 11 o'clock on the East Coast. Good morning from RSBN Live. I'm Robert McNeely. Always a joy to be with you. And this Friday, TGIF, I hope you're planning a wonderful weekend with family members and friends and celebrating what has been a monumental week in the Trump presidency, and with less than 50 days in office, all of the wonderful accomplishments. And, you know, 2 memorandums signed into progress by President Trump just yesterday, honoring women this March, being the month of March, honoring women who have made such great contributions to this country. Also Irish Americans as well, which kind of touched my heart as a proud Irish American. We also learned that my colleague Matthew Alvarez is Irish as well. So a huge celebration as we look forward to 10 days from now, St. Patrick's Day, March, a beautiful month of the year and meaningful for all of those Irish immigrants who came through Ellis Island, I know as my family did, and ended up settling in the Chicago area for the most part. But that memorandum including cities as Boston, Chicago, New York, and everything the Irish have done to contribute to not only America, but the world. That island of 5 million really has gone everywhere. If you have a chance to visit the Emerald Isle, there is no more fun and fair place that they will really give you that sense of, you know, Southern hospitality down here. There's nothing like it. But if you go to Ireland, oh my goodness, people there are so nice, so kind, and a friendship that we have shared for now centuries with the great Emerald Isle, a tiny island that has literally shaped the world. There are Irish everywhere, and especially here in America as we celebrate St. Patrick and all the contributions of Irish Americans in our great land, really for since the mid-19th century. Can you imagine, too, coming off a boat as you immigrate to a country and then a civil war breaking out? And that's what led to the Irish Brigade in New York and saying, hey, you have to go serve in the military now. That would have been a big surprise, but they have really gone through a lot as a people. And here in America, they found the golden roads that led to prosperity. And President Trump recognizing that. And that's what's so interesting about the argument of the far left, because they claim that this president is somehow anti-immigrant. Nothing could be further from the truth. What President Trump seeks to achieve here, and really has during his tenure, is a safe and secure border. He wants criminal illegal aliens to not continue to commit heinous crimes. It's common sense. I remember talking to a colleague a couple of years ago about illegal immigration, and he said, you know what's amazing about Washington, D.C.? It doesn't matter if it's a Republican president, a Democrat Congress, a Democrat president, or Republican Congress, but over the years, those kicking the can down the road because it was somewhat seen as a toxic issue. And he was actually someone left of center, and he said it was great that for once someone came down a golden escalator, his own, mind you, and led with securing the borders and getting rid of illegal immigration, ultimately because simply whether or not you come in for malice, you're breaking the law by coming in illegally. So you've broken the law. It's plain and simple. It's black and white. On top of that, this gentleman spoke on the fact that our economy will be stronger for everyone if you don't allow the pouring in of illegal immigrants. Then you also prevent sex trafficking. You also prevent labor trafficking. But that's the sad thing. I mean, even great institutions like the Chamber of Commerce on the right side of the aisle would align with people like George W. Bush, who wanted illegal immigration to come in because that's what the globalist mindset thought would be best for the world, because it made some people rich at the expense of, you know, not having to pay an equal wage to laborers. Is that moral? Is that biblical? Absolutely not. It's a form of slavery. And we don't want that happening here in the United States. We now know we're the biggest consumer of trafficking, whether it be in labor or sex trafficking, but not anymore under President Trump's policies. And thanks to the great officials like Tom Homan, the border czar, like Kristi Noem at DHS, they have been so vigilant and also joining brave ICE agents and Border Patrol on these raids. And thank God for people who are willing to step up and to put themselves in harm's way to help protect the American people. And there looks like a live shot of the redesignation of Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And speaking of our military, God bless all of you. The recruitment numbers through the roof ever since President Trump coming back on the scene. We saw it the night of Inauguration Day with the South Korean unit saying to President Trump, "Welcome back, sir." We are honored to have you, and everyone is ready to serve. And I remember President Trump with that saber, if you remember, cutting the cake. We'll toss it now there to the redesignation of Fort Bragg in North Carolina.
Richard L. Hudson. Command General Andrew Pappas and Command Sergeant Major T.J. Holland. North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Rachel Hunt. North Carolina State Senator Bradley Overcash. North Carolina Representative Donnie Wallace. Mayor Bellflowers and Mrs. Bellflowers of Hope Mills, North Carolina. Diane Watts, daughter of Private First Class Bragg. Melissa Milliken, granddaughter of Private First Class Bragg, accompanied by spouse Nathan Milliken and children Landon Watts, Tristan Milliken, and Iridescent Milliken. Catherine Watts, granddaughter of Private First Class Bragg, accompanied by spouse Jason Pelletier. Jennifer Bell, granddaughter of Private First Class Bragg, accompanied by children Garrett and Gwyneth Bell. Rebecca Amapour, granddaughter of Private First Class Bragg, accompanied by spouse Nami Amapour and children Nathan and Dylan Amapour. Amy Redinger, granddaughter of Private First Class Bragg, accompanied by spouse Christopher Redinger and children Anara and Cordelia Redinger. Brian French, grandson of Private First Class Bragg. Benjamin French, grandson of Private First Class Bragg, accompanied by spouse Sherry French and daughter Avery French. Command General, U.S. Army Special Operations Command, Lieutenant General Jonathan Bragg and Mrs. Bragg. Mr. Dan Dietrich, North Carolina Civilian Aide to the Secretary of the Army. Mr. Blair Schwader, North Carolina Civilian Aide to the Secretary of the Army. Mr. Grayson Overall, from the office of Senator Tom Tillis. Director, Sergeant Major Retired Rick Long, representing Secretary Jocelyn Millett, Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. And from the A2nd Airborne Division Command Team, Major General James Pat Work and Mrs. Work, and Command Sergeant Major Randolph Delapina and Mrs. Delapina. The color guard for today's ceremony is provided by the Fort Bragg Sergeant Audie Murphy Club. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for honors to Lieutenant General Anderson. Today's salute is being fired by Alpha Battery, 3rd Battalion, 319th Airborne Field Artillery Regiment, the Apex Battery, commanded by 1st Lieutenant Timothy Carter and Staff Sergeant Christian Villafana. Please remain standing for honors to the nation and the invocation, which will be delivered by the Fort Liberty Garrison Chaplain, Colonel Jay Putin.
invite you to pray with me. Almighty and gracious God, it is with gratitude that we come before you this day as we rename this installation. Named after a soldier, a paratrooper whose valor, devotion to duty, and true grit rose to meet immense challenges on the battlefields 80 years ago. We remember. And we ask you, Lord, this day that this legacy would continue. May the soldiers who presently serve and those who will serve here in the future display this same courage and commitment to service. Now, may your blessing be upon this place, and may the lives of the soldiers and families stationed here flourish from this day forward. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. In the name of Christ, I pray. Amen.
Please be seated. At this time, Captain Laura M. Kelly from Alpha Battery, 3rd Battalion of the 319th Airborne Field Artillery Regiment is presenting Mrs. Diane Watts with the last canister fired from today's salute battery in recognition of her father's service and dedication. Today, we are gathered to witness the historic redesignation of Fort Liberty, North Carolina to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. At this time, the host for today's ceremony, Lieutenant General Anderson, accompanied by Command Sergeant Major Barker, Colonel Mixon, and Command Sergeant Major Scott, will conduct the official casing of the Fort Liberty garrison colors for the last time and the uncasing of the Fort Bragg colors. The very heart of the unit is symbolized by the colors under which the troops serve. The colors stand as a silent reminder of the past glories and traditions, lend inspiration for present endeavors, and shine like a guiding beacon into the future. The essence of the casing and uncasing ceremony is an event marked by tradition, honor, respect, and sacrifice. Tradition holds that the colors lead the unit into battle, emphasized by the regulation containing instructions to the color bearers, which states, when in action, resolve not to part with the colors, but with your life. Just like the casing, the uncasing ceremony is a simple event, rich with tradition and heritage. It defines a point in time to commemorate the beginning or continuation of a unit's history along with the lineage by carrying on the finest of traditions of the United States Army. Effective 10 February 2025, Fort Liberty Installation Code 37225 is redesignated as Fort Bragg in accordance with the Secretary of Defense, Title 10, United States Code, Section 113. I direct the Army to change the name of Fort Liberty, North Carolina to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, in honor of Private First Class Roland L. Bragg. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Gregory K. Anderson.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, soldiers, families, and honored guests, thank you for being here today. It's a great day for our Army and our community. To our Secretary of the Army, the Honorable Dan Driscoll, our senior official performing the duties of Undersecretary of the Army, Mr. David Fitzgerald, to the Commanding General of the United States Army Forces Command, General Pappas and Command Sergeant Major Holland, to our dear leaders and friends from across North Carolina, Senator Budd, Congressman Hudson, Congressman Harrigan, Lieutenant Governor Hunt, State Senator Overcash, State Representative Loftus, and Mayor and Mrs. Bellflowers. I'm grateful to you all for your leadership and service and for honoring us today with your presence. To the wonderful family of Private First Class Roland Bragg, it has been great to get to know you and to have you here after traveling from every corner of this nation. You have made this event truly special for everyone. Thank you. Today, we gather on an installation that is the largest in our Army per capita, covering 164,000 acres, supporting over 48,000 soldiers, 80,000 family members, 2,000 Department of Defense civilians, and nearly 100,000 retirees and their families. It is home to our Forces Command and Army Reserve Command. It is home to the 18th Airborne Corps, the Joint Special Operations Command, the United States Army Special Operations Command, the 82nd Airborne Division, and much more. Fort Bragg is just not any base. It is our nation's premier force projection platform. It is a culture of toughness and war fighting, and it is a way of life. We refer to Fort Bragg as the center of the universe, the beating heart of our Army's ability to deploy without warning anywhere across the globe, to help and assist others, to respond to crises, to deter conflict, and if necessary, to fight and win our nation's wars. For over 100 years, our citizens have come here from every corner of the nation, every walk of life, to serve others, to live with noble purpose, and to challenge themselves to become the nation's warriors. Fort Bragg is a place where ordinary people transform into heroes. Ordinary people like Private First Class Roland L. Bragg. PFC Bragg came from humble beginnings. His story embodies the greatest generation. Born in Webster, Maine in 1923, he came of age in the depths of the Great Depression, selling vegetables from the family farm and working alongside his brother at his father's auto salvage yard. In July of 1943, Bragg enlisted in the Army, and after earning his jump wings, he was assigned to the 513th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 17th Airborne Division, 18th Airborne Corps, and he trained right here in the pine forests of Fort Bragg. Soon he was off to the European theater of World War II, and on a bitter cold January morning, outside of Bastogne, Belgium, as the Battle of the Bulge raged, he would put that training to test. The 17th Airborne, or the Golden Talons Division, was engaged in a fierce battle over a critical piece of terrain. During that fighting, Private First Class Bragg was wounded and taken prisoner along with 4 other paratroopers. They were subsequently taken to a German aid station behind enemy lines. While he was there, PFC Bragg learned that his German captor and another American paratrooper were both Freemasons. They somehow convinced the German guard to let the prisoners go, but only if Private First Class Bragg first knocked the German guard out with a rifle, so it looked like he struggled. Wounded as he was, PFC Bragg was more than happy to oblige. As well as he took the German soldier's uniform, and then he commandeered a German ambulance nearby. Bragg then loaded the wounded paratroopers into the truck and began a race back to the American lines under intense fire. Fire which he actually believed had killed the wounded paratroopers in the back of the ambulance that he had tried to save. It was for this action that PFC Bragg earned the Silver Star, the 3rd highest military decoration for valor in combat. He was a hero. But we can only imagine the burden he carried for years, believing he had let his fellow paratroopers down. Roland Bragg married his wife Barbara in 1946, and together they raised 3 daughters, Linda, Deborah, and of course Diane, who we are honored to have with us here today. Diane, could you please stand up so we can see you? Thank you. With his family by his side, he enjoyed the long peace which his generation fought so hard to secure. Bragg rarely spoke of his service, and for nearly 50 years he continued to believe he was the sole survivor of the desperate flight from captivity in the Ardennes. But his Army story didn't end there. As the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Bulge approached, John Martz, a fellow member of the 17th Airborne Division, was reflecting on his own wartime experience. John, too, had been wounded in the battle near Bastogne and found himself in a barn 20 miles behind the German lines. Someone, a nameless paratrooper, had loaded him and 3 others into an ambulance and drove them to safety. John Martz began writing letters to surviving members of his division, searching for the man who had saved his life. One of those letters was sent to Private First Class Bragg. Quote, "I remember sitting at the kitchen table reading that letter," Bragg told a California paper, "and chills went up and down my spine." Soon after reading the letter, Roland traveled to California and was reunited with the paratrooper whose life he had saved. 2 ordinary men, bound by an extraordinary moment, found each other across the decades. This reunion wasn't just a footnote in Roland's story. It was and stands as a testament to the bonds forged here in this place, bonds that many who have trained and served here would immediately recognize and feel. From the pine forest where Roland trained to the battlefields of today, Fort Bragg has carried that spirit forward, shaping warriors who have answered the call across the years. Over 80 years have passed since Roland Bragg arrived here. 8 decades of soldiers from Fort Bragg deploying to every major conflict, defending America and her allies across the globe. And they come home to Fort Bragg. For some, it may be more. It may be home for just a few months, and for others, a lifetime. But this place is more than a military stronghold. It's the lifeblood of our region. If it were a city, this 260,000 strong person community would make it the 5th largest in North Carolina. Its economic impact, over $8 billion annually, fuels jobs, businesses, and growth in Fayetteville and across Cumberland County. Our soldiers, our spouses, and veterans are seamlessly intertwined in this community. Teachers in our schools, nurses in our hospitals, students at Fayetteville State and other institutions of higher education. These community ties and partnerships have bound us together across generations and form a collective pride and reverence for this place we honor today. Today we salute a man who answered the call, came to North Carolina, and forged the best version of himself. And so today we honor a hero worthy of the name Bragg. It is synonymous with excellence. It is the home of airborne and special operations forces. When the nation needs to project power on short notice, the first call comes to Fort Bragg. When that call comes, we answer with speed and overwhelming force, and if necessary, we will fight and prevail. Just down the street, about 500 meters off to my right, stands a statue. We call him Iron Mike, but the official name is the Airborne Trooper. It's not a statue of a particular person, but a mirror reflecting the potential of every soldier who passes through these gates. Roland Bragg didn't arrive here a hero. Shaped in the crucible of Bragg's training grounds and in the battlefields, he became one. So Iron Mike stands as proof of that promise. The nameless airborne trooper, a quiet hero reflecting not just who we are, but who we can become. And it has been my experience that this place and our nation and our Army are chock full of people like Roland Bragg. Fort Bragg is where soldiers transform, where the ordinary find the extraordinary, and where the call finds its answer, where a quiet man from Maine emerges a hero. In his honor and in the shared legacy of all who have called this place home, we answer the call. Welcome back to Bragg. May this place continue to forge heroes for our nation. Airborne, all the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, the granddaughter of Private First Class Roland L. Bragg, Mrs. Rebecca Amador.
Well, good morning, everybody. Reflecting on memories of my grandparents and the question on many folks' minds after the renaming announcement, who is Roland L. Bragg? Well, let me tell you, he was a loving and devoted husband, father, and grandfather. He was a provider. He was a pillar of our small community in Nobleboro, Maine, and a philanthropist that did not seek recognition for his generosity. Even his own family did not know the full extent of his generosity until after he was gone. He liked to joke around. He didn't take things too seriously. And he was extraordinarily curious about everything. He loved new technology and wanted to know how things worked. And I remember him being particularly tickled when VHS movie cameras came out. I can only imagine what he would think of the technology we have now. I never saw my granddad wear his military uniform. He was not one to go to a Memorial Day parade or a Veterans Day parade. Even one Memorial Day when I was marching in a parade in our town, he was working. The uniform I knew him to wear were green and blue Dickies work clothes, a t-shirt, and later in life, suspenders. And he had a big heart. He was strong, hardworking, and proud. My grandpa, as you've heard, was a Depression-era kid. He grew up with very little, and he's definitely a member of what I think we all know and understand to be the greatest generation. He saved everything and anything that had any value or could be reused or salvaged in any way, and he put those salvage efforts to good use in many projects over the years. My grandfather was a stable force in my life. My grandparents' home was a second home to my sister Jennifer and I. We grew up in the same small town of Nobleboro, Maine, and we were at our grandparents' home a lot. I have a lot of really great memories of my granddad, playing checkers with him and him never letting me win. And I literally never won. He would make pancakes for us, and I know this was a tradition he did for his own children. He carried it on to his grandchildren, and he would take special requests, any shape you wanted. If it was a bunny or a bear, didn't matter. You want a leaf, he'll make it for you. I had a lot of fun going on outings with him. He loved to go to air shows and car shows and antiquing. And I got to go looking at jobs with him when he ran his building moving business. I remember climbing under buildings, learning about foundations and heavy equipment, construction, hydraulics, and learning negotiation and people skills from observing my grandfather and how he dealt with people around him, including his customers. One of my favorite jobs that we looked at together was out in Vinyl Haven, which is a small island off mid-coast Maine. And it was so much fun because we got to take the ferry boat out to the island. My granddad also provided encouragement for us to do well in school and rewarded each A with $1, which may not sound like much today, but in the 1980s, I assure you it was much appreciated. He was a very hard worker, almost to a fault. He was a man of many talents, a jack of all trades, and if something needed to be done, he would figure out how to do it. I remember him building cottages, salvaging buildings or items within them, moving buildings, operating and working on heavy equipment, welding, working on vehicles, working on and building a retaining wall for the home which we affectionately called the brick house, that he and my grandmother had intended on moving into when they downsized, although they never did move into that home. He never talked about his time in World War II with me. I love history and was curious about it, and I discussed it with my grandmother a number of times. And I feel very blessed. You heard a moment ago the story of the man, John Martz, who reached out to him from California. This happened in the mid-90s. Again, my grandfather had spent his entire life thinking everyone in the back of that ambulance had died. And I feel like it was a tremendous gift for him to learn that someone had survived. And it was a true blessing. I also really love the story that my grandmother told me, which is also recounted in what is our history book for Noblesboro, Maine. I'll show you guys a copy here. This was a book that was written in 1988, and this was done in celebration for our bicentennial. And my grandparents both are featured in this book for a number of different reasons, because they were very involved in their community. But there is one story that's recounted in here. It's one that my grandmother had shared with me. My grandmother told me that she and my grandfather were dating before he left for the war. And she decided to send him a Parker pen and pencil set with metal caps for Christmas. When he got that set, he wore it over the pocket over his heart. And thankfully, when he was hit in the chest with shrapnel, the metal pen and pencil prevented the shrapnel from entering his heart. He was sent to an Army hospital to convalesce, and during that time, he wrote home to his brother Floyd and Floyd's wife Lizzie in a letter dated February 22nd, 1945. And I'm going to just read you a short passage from that letter. When I got back to the rest camp, I came to the hospital to let them take some steel out of me. All I've been doing here is writing letters. This war is no fun, though. There's too much grief in it. I lost a lot of my buddies, but they all went down fighting. I learned one thing, and that is rank doesn't mean a thing when you're in a tight spot. It's the one with a little common sense. All I can say is that I thank God that I'm still here today. I've always loved this quote, and I've shared it with my own children over the years when retelling our family history. And I think my granddad, if he were here today, would encourage the folks here to use their common sense, to work hard in school and beyond. And most certainly, he would want them to appreciate the importance of giving back and making an impact on your own communities when you're done with your service to your country. And I thank you for having us here today.
At this time, we invite the family of Private First Class Roland L. Bragg to join the Honorable Daniel Driscoll, the 18th Airborne Commander, and the Command Sergeant Major, and the Fort Bragg Garrison Commander and Command Sergeant Major for the sign unveiling.
Is that okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the playing and singing of the Army Song. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. We thank you for attending. Airborne all the way.
And a moving ceremony from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, renamed for Roland Bragg, an officer from the United States Army in World War II, an inspiring story that I really was not familiar with as well. So reading about this great American hero and a humble man, and look forward to honoring him with the renaming of Fort Bragg in North Carolina. We now await Oval Office remarks from President Trump before he is scheduled to depart for the Southern White House in Mar-a-Lago. Of course, Florida, the Sunshine State, his new residence, and has been enjoying that for a number of years now. Of course, it was initially supposed to be a presidential retreat, but then became one once again with President Trump ascending to the presidency 8 years ago now. Can you believe that? Only the second gentleman to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. Thank you to our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. FreeTrumpBook.com. What a great way to get started on your Christmas shopping. I'll give you a little hint here. It's free, and you get a couple of wonderful guides. The Kids Guide to President Trump and the Kids Guide to the Courage of President Trump, along with a free Christmas ornament. So a great way to share with your young patriots at home, or maybe that neighbor who's not paying attention to everything that's happening right now. How can you not be with the way the news cycle is? But FreeTrumpBook.com, all you have to do is pay for shipping and handling. Brought to you by the great Mike Huckabee, the ambassador to Israel. An amazing man and former governor of Arkansas. Of course, his successor and lovely daughter, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, doing an outstanding job as America's youngest governor, and also former White House press secretary under President Trump. FreeTrumpBook.com. Learn everything about how President Trump ran and why he did the first time, what the issues are, and how he's impacting generations to come. So again, FreeTrumpBook.com. Jump ahead on your Christmas shopping list. And how about AngelPaste.com? A wonderful Christian company out of Spring, Texas, just off of the Gulf of America. And this miracle cream, such a wonderful thing to experience. I tried it on the show here just last year and have some at home as well. It will take away your dry skin. I promise you this. All non-GMO, no chemicals. And they have other products that help with an immune boost if you take the orange option, or they also have one that repels mosquitoes. And they're used to that, not being far from Houston, Texas, a very tropical climate. So you get those nasty buggers down there. and angelpaste.com is taking care of you in so many ways. Again, non-GMO, no chemicals, vitamin Bs, vitamin Cs, everything good for your skin to absorb. Christian owned, and they hire veterans as well. Very pro-America. So we love angelpaste.com. Please see all of their products again at angelpaste.com. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And if you're just joining in to the network, I'm Robert McNeely, TGIF. Thank you for joining in on Friday morning, about 11:40 on the East Coast, 8:40 in the Golden State of California, and that's a golden image of our White House in this new golden era as President Trump has laid out on Truth Social just the excitement behind nearly 40 days in office, or 50 days in office. Can you believe how quick time is going by? As he mentioned in the speech the other night, it's almost as if he's accomplished more than those who have been 100 days in office or even 4 years. We're actually going to a press conference with the Vice President of the United States right now, J.D. Vance, giving a press conference.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and I appreciate you being here. It's great to be here. It's great to talk to some of the incredible people that we have, both at the local level, the Texas state level, and also, of course, our federal border patrol, who are doing so many good things to keep us safe. And I have some bad news and some good news. And the bad news is that because of what Joe Biden did at the southern border for 4 years, we had record increases in migrant crime, in fentanyl deaths, and in just floods and floods of people who shouldn't be in our country who came into the United States of America. We also have a number of ways in which the cartels became more advanced, better war fighters, because Joe Biden opened up the American southern border and allowed the cartels to turn it into their playground. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is, as President Trump said last night at the State of the Union, it turns out we didn't need new laws. We didn't need fancy legislation. We just needed a new president of the United States, and thank God that's exactly what we have. And I will say that the most heartening message that I take away from my visit here at the Texas border is the number of Border Patrol agents who have come up to me and said thank you, or said because of this, we've cut the number of border crossings from 1,500 a day to 30 a day. Or the people who have come up and said we've seen a reduction in 85% of the number of people who are dying at the American southern border. And every single day that we continue to keep this border safe, that means less migrant crime, that means less fentanyl coming into our communities, that means more safety and security for the people of the United States of America. And of course, we know the border problem, the border crisis under Biden's administration was a national crisis, but it acutely affected the communities right here. And I've already heard heartbreaking stories of people who are still picking up the pieces, local mayors who are still dealing with the budgetary consequences of what the Joe Biden administration allowed to happen at the American southern border. And that, too, is something that President Trump is going to help address, help fix, and help solve. Now, I wanted to bring Secretary Hegseth and Director Gabbard at DNI down here because, one, I obviously enjoy their company, and it's good to have them down here with me looking around today. But unfortunately, we know that because of what's happened, the border crisis has become a matter of national intelligence, and it's also become something that requires the Department of Defense to engage with. I was talking with Paul Perez earlier. The drone technology that the cartels are using requires, unfortunately, a military response and military support. So it was important for Secretary Hegseth to see what's going on, because we know that the millions and millions of people who were let in over the last 4 years, many of them are connected to foreign terrorists. It's important for our leader of national intelligence to get a sense of what's here on the ground. So before we take questions from the press, and all of us are willing to take questions, I want to give Secretary Hegseth and then Director Gabbard an opportunity to say a few words themselves. Mr. Secretary.
Well, Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for inviting us. It's great to be here with you, with the director, with our fellow friends in civilian clothes and in other shades of green. This is a demonstration of a true partnership on the southern border. As President Trump has made clear on the campaign trail and from day one and last night, Border security is national security. And from the Defense Department, we've watched for a couple of decades other people's borders being secured while ours was open for an invasion of drugs and of violence and of chaos for American communities. That stops under President Trump. And the Defense Department has assets that we can bring to bear, not just troops, not just surveillance, not just equipment, but actual planning and capabilities that enhance what Border Patrol is already doing, which is why it's been incredible to hear from our partners about what we've been able to allow them to do, facilitate them, and we've seen it in the numbers. 98% drop in crossings on the southern border. We're not yet at 100% operational control, but we are on our way because that is the mandate that the president has given us. So more resources are coming to this border. We are dedicated to securing it. That's the reason for our trip and our partnership. And I want to thank all the men and women who've been doing it recently in uniform, who have been doing it a long time right here, have dedicated their lives to securing the American people. And at the Defense Department, we are committed to continuing to being a big part of it. So, Mr. Vice President, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Great. Now, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for your leadership in bringing the country's attention to what has been happening here at the border and the significant change that has already occurred under the short time that President Trump has been in office. Really, what you're seeing here today and what you'll continue to see is a unified effort across President Trump's national security team, the Department of Homeland Security, towards our mission, which is to ensure a safe, free, and prosperous society for Americans. As Director of National Intelligence, there are a number of areas where we are focused. The President talked about in his speech, over 21 million people have come across our borders illegally under Joe Biden's administration. There are many of them that we don't know who they are. They have not been vetted. We don't know where they are. I'll give you one quick example of one of the problems that we are getting after. From Central Asia, there were over 4,000 people who came across our borders using an ISIS-affiliated network. Our National Counterterrorism Center went through and identified those individuals. There were hundreds of them who were either known terrorists or associated with known terrorists. That information was provided to the Biden administration. You may remember in some of the news, a little over 100 of those people were arrested in 2024. Of those who were arrested, only 8 were either deported or remained in custody. Only 8. The rest of them were released back into our country. Where are they? What are they doing? What may they be plotting? This is just the beginning. There are many, many areas that we need to stay very focused on, working with the Department of Homeland Security, working with the FBI to ensure that we're keeping the American people safe. Our Counterterrorism Center is working on making sure that we have that single source for vetting so that we can figure out who is actually in our country and identify those who pose a threat and get them removed. The President's designation of the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations falls directly into this, especially as we're seeing some of the tactics that these cartels are using reflect some of the tactics that we've seen used by Islamist terrorists in countries that many of us have served in overseas. Our mission is very clear. Our objective is to keep the American people safe. I'm grateful to be a part of this team that President Trump has assembled to accomplish that mission. Thank you.
Great. So before I take questions, let me just say 2 final things. First of all, the reason why we've seen, as Pete said, a 98% reduction of border crossings, the reason why this particular site has gone from over 1,500 crossings per day to 30 crossings per day is because President Trump has empowered and, in fact, demanded that his whole government take the task of border control seriously. And that's exactly what we're doing. And of course, and this leads to my final point before we take questions, it is impossible to do without the men and women on the ground who are actually doing the hard work. They just want to be empowered to do their jobs. President Trump has made that possible. So from the bottom of my heart and for a grateful nation, to every person I've met here today, thank you for working hard on the American people's business. It's been an honor to be with you. It's been an honor to see what you do, and we're going to keep on supporting you over the next 4 years. Congressman Gonzalez, thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership. And now we'll take some questions from reporters. Sir.
So, as you guys have been exemplifying for today, that border crossings are down. A lot of attention has been turned to the interior since obviously there's been a lot of illegal immigrants. What is, in your opinion, the biggest obstacle to actually carrying out President Trump's mass deportations? Even though, yes, like apprehensions and arrests and deportations have gone up in his first month, but a lot of people are expecting a bigger capacity for deportation. So what's the biggest?
So let me say a few things about that. So first of all, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we have seen pretty significant increases in deportations and apprehensions and arrests. But we have to remember that President Biden gutted the entire immigration enforcement regime of this country. We are trying to rebuild so that we actually empower people to enforce the immigration laws of the American people. It is common sense. It's what the American people want us to do. There are a couple of other things that we're working on. I don't want to get ahead of any public announcements, but one of the ways that we wanted to make sure that we're enforcing our border is that we make it easier for people who are here illegally to go back home of their own accord. We don't want to have to go around and arrest every person, but we will enforce the American people's immigration laws. If you're here illegally, the message from our administration is you should go back home, and if you want to come to the United States, apply through the proper channels. That's an important thing that we're doing. And the final thing is this costs money. One of the most important parts of the president's reconciliation priorities is, of course, tax reform on the one hand, and on the other hand, making sure that we get proper resources so that we can pay for the flights, and we can pay for the detention centers, and we can pay for all the components necessary to ensure that we're re-migrating illegal immigrants back to their country of origin. I guarantee it is a part of the president's priorities. We'll keep on working on it. We've made a lot of progress, but we're going to keep on working on it over the remainder of the president's term. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, I want to ask you about border wall and tariffs. But first on the border wall, how do you and the president...
Could you say your outlet, by the way, when you guys ask questions?
Yeah, Reagan Reese, Daily Caller.
Thank you.
How do you and the president define success this term with the border wall, and how much of the southern border wall needs to be walled off before Trump leaves office?
Well, look, I think the president's hope is that by the end of the term, we build the entire border wall. And, of course, that's the physical structure of the border wall itself. But we even heard today there are so many good technological tools, so many great artificial intelligence enabled technologies that allow us, for example, a camera, not a person, but a camera picks up somebody 2 miles away who's about to come across the southern border. Maybe it's livestock, right? Maybe it's a critter in the desert. Maybe it's a human being with a weapon on their back. We're using artificial intelligence to make us better at the job of border enforcement, but we've got to make sure that technology is deployed across the entire American southern border. We're going to do it as much as we can, as broadly as we can, because that's how we're going to protect the American people's security. Yeah, go ahead.
Last time they were paused because they deployed 10,000 troops to the border. What can they do this time to make the tariffs go away?
Well, what the president has said is we need a sustained commitment from the government of Mexico to take the job of border security seriously. Fentanyl is the single largest cause of death among young Americans, and we know that a substantial portion of it is, the precursors are made in China. They come to Mexico, they're manufactured in Mexico and brought across the border by the Mexican drug cartels. We want to see fewer Americans dying of these terrible fentanyl overdoses, when we're going to apply as much leverage as possible to the Mexican government as possible. In some ways, look, the president obviously cares deeply about the American people. He serves the American people first. I actually think he's doing a huge favor to the people of Mexico, because if they don't get control of these cartels, the people of Mexico are going to wake up in a narco state where the cartels have more power than their own government. President Trump is trying to help. The Mexican government needs to take this issue of immigration enforcement seriously. In the back, yeah.
Mr. Vice President, Ali Bradley, News Nation. So since the designation of the cartels as terrorists, does that give the United States the green light to go into Mexico and to strike them there? I mean, right now, obviously, they've struck in the Houthis in Yemen. So why not, when we've seen cross-border violence, go after them in Mexico? And then my second question is about a designation. I'll follow up on these.
Go ahead and ask the second question.
Why isn't the Juarez/La Línea cartel designated when it's in one of the most deadliest places on the planet? Juarez has been designated as one of the deadliest cities. It's right across from El Paso. We've talked to community leaders. They say, we know Juarez cartel's operating in the U.S., and so are their affiliates. We don't even want to talk about it out loud, though, because then we'll put a target on our back. They're scared. Border Patrol even thought they were designated, but they're not. The State Department didn't tell me why.
So on that, we're looking at additional organizations. Obviously, this is the determination of whether to determine a particular organization, a terrorist organization, is something that we consult with our leaders of the Department of Defense. We also consult with our friends in other governments. We maintain the optionality to designate further organizations, terrorist organizations, if we feel that we need to in order to protect the American people. And I think President Trump has made it very clear he's not going to be shy about designating some of these cartel organizations as terrorists if he thinks he has to protect the American people. Your first question was about
American forces to strike.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So look, I'm not going to make any announcements about any invasions of Mexico here today. The president has a megaphone, and of course he'll speak to these issues as he feels necessary. But what designating cartel organizations allows us to do is deploy the full resources of the United States military to engage in serious border enforcement. Of course, the president is going to make the determination about how we deploy those forces. But our hope is that Mexico takes this job seriously. We don't want to have negative relationships with the Mexican government. We want the Mexican government to help itself, but also in the process to help the American people by taking these organizations seriously. It's going to destabilize the entire country of Mexico, the entire government, if they don't take it more seriously. We're hopeful that they will. And if they don't, then of course, we'll figure out what to do from there.
So, you just mentioned something about invasion of Mexico. Is there any talk or any thoughts about actually U.S. military forces going into Mexico?
No. Next question.
On tariffs, are any other industries other than the automotive reaching out to you guys to carve out special deals? And did the automotive industry know this was coming before today?
Well, a number of industries have reached out to us to ask us for exceptions to the tariffs, but I think the president's been very clear here that he wants the tariffs to apply broadly. He doesn't want to have 500 different industries getting 500 different carve-outs, and the way to avoid application of the tariffs is to have your factory and have your facility in the United States of America. That is the way. Invest in America. That is how you will avoid being penalized by these tariffs. Sir.
Vice President, KSAT 12, John Paul Barajas. You've been talking about the improvements that your administration has done here with the crossings. Can you talk about the decline prior to President Trump taking office under the Biden administration?
Well, I think like so many Americans, apparently members of the Mexican drug cartel figured out in November and December after the election that Joe Biden was asleep at the wheel and they had to be dealing with the then president-elect and now president. If you look at what drove the declines before the inauguration, people will tell you they knew that Donald Trump was coming back into office. They knew he was going to take border enforcement seriously. And so they were already getting ahead of actually cutting down those illegal crossing numbers. We saw that from the Mexican government, of course, because we were threatening some economic sanctions against them. But we also saw it from the cartels themselves. And even today, because, of course, it takes a little time to get from the deepest parts of Central America to the American southern border. What we often find is that there are massive numbers of illegal immigrants who have already started to make the trek and have decided, you know what, because Donald Trump's president, we're going to go back home. We heard today about a Honduran group of migrants who decided they're just going to go back home because they recognize that under Donald Trump's leadership, we take border enforcement seriously. Thank you all. Take care.
Okay, guys, we gotta go. Cool. Let's move.
Hearing from Vice President Vance and Tulsi Gabbard, also our great Pete Hegseth, working so diligently at the Department of National Intelligence and at the Pentagon to secure the border. So great to have, people who are very active, not only on social media, but responding to the media itself, and also being the most transparent administration in history. As Caroline Leavitt said, that the greatest spokesperson is President Trump, but what's great about this cabinet is that we're all accessible to you, the media. And it's just about noon o'clock on the East Coast. You see the White House there, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, a sunny day in our nation's capital of Washington, D.C., awaiting official Oval Office remarks from President Trump. I'm Robert McNeely with Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. A joy to be with you on this beautiful Friday. Hope that you have wonderful plans for this weekend. But our sponsors are some of the best, bringing you all of this unbridled coverage here at the network. Colonial Metals is your go-to for gold and silver. Get that free gold guide if you scan the QR code or go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN. A great way to look at your options to be the hedge against inflation, and whether that is looking to change your 401k or IRA plans into gold and silver, or just trying to build on your properties and assets that you already have, Colonial Metals Group is an outstanding option, if not the best. Paul Stone, the CEO, comes on our show regularly to talk about just how important it is to protect yourself against the printing of money, inflation, and all of the wild spending that this Congress has done, especially in the last administration. So scan that QR code now for your free gold guide and learn everything that is important to you and your loved ones when it comes to retirement, or even just sending a student, ideally, to that lovely campus right behind me, Auburn University. So this will give you those options. And gold has increased in value 840% since 2000 and over 7,000% since 1971, when we went off of the gold standard during the Nixon administration. So scan that QR code now or visit freegoldguide.com/RSBN. So an exciting time to be alive with all of the craziness of Washington, D.C. But make sure you go to Colonial Metals Group and visit them today. And again, we're awaiting a White House press conference from the Oval Office, remarks from President Trump. And it looks like we could go there live now, Mr. Director. We'll toss it over to the Oval Office. President Trump there with you now.
This program in order to ensure that people who are engaged in these sorts of activities can't benefit from a program that's really not intended to support those sorts of things.
And what are the consequences if they are not good?
The consequences would be that they wouldn't get forgiveness of their student loans as they would be eligible for if they were working for the government or a normal nonprofit that's not violating the law.
All right. Any questions on that? Anybody have any questions? So we'll talk about the manufacturing turnaround, and it's been very early, but it's pretty significant. The numbers were much better, as you know, than projected by the media, and a little surprising, actually, how strong, how fast, because we have many companies are moving into our country. As you probably know, it's a statistic that everyone talks about, but nobody seems to have done much about. Since the beginning of NAFTA, there's been 90,000 plants and factories closed in this country. Think of that. 90,000 plants and factories have been closed in this country. Many of them have been car manufacturing plants. And that's a terrible statistic, and we'll be turning that around. You're going to see it already. We already have numerous that are being built or starting to be built, and numerous that were being built in other countries, and they stopped, and they're coming here now because of the tariffs. And that's a big deal. That's what you want to hear. During the last year, the Biden administration saw a loss of more than 110,000 manufacturing jobs, or 9,000 manufacturing jobs every single month. It averaged about 9,000 a month, 110,000 manufacturing jobs. During the first full month in office, we've not only stopped that manufacturing collapse, but we've begun to rapidly reverse it and get major gains. We created 10,000 manufacturing jobs in February alone. That hasn't happened in a long time. And these aren't government jobs, which actually we cut. These are private sector manufacturing jobs. So we gained all of those jobs, 10,000 jobs, and we barely started yet. That's a very unusual number. People are surprised by it. I'm even a little surprised. On auto jobs, we created almost 9,000 new jobs in the auto production field. And the reason for that is largely they think things are happening, so they're already geared up. In some cases, they had rooms in their plants, or they had empty plants that they were able to put into use quickly because they see, because of the tariffs, they don't want to be dealing with other places, and they don't want to go back and forth and around and through the borders and across Mexico border and Canada border and all of, they want to have the jobs in one location. And they've had space, and if they had space, they were able to create the jobs almost immediately. In some cases, they'll be building plants to take care of those jobs. So we created 9,000 new jobs already in the auto production, auto parts manufacturing. So we want the auto parts ideally, and I think from a simplicity standpoint too, to be built and made in the United States. It's in a single month. That all took place in a single month, 9,000 new auto jobs. You haven't heard that in a long time. After auto workers lost more than 27,000 auto jobs in the final year of Biden. These are also high-paying jobs. These are very prime jobs. The ISM Manufacturing Survey and the S&P Manufacturing Survey have also confirmed that our administration is presiding over a brand new domestic manufacturing boom after major collapse under Biden. It was a collapse. All he did is keep adding new government jobs, which are not the jobs you want. We're trying to shrink government and grow the private sector. That's what we've been doing. Under the final 2 years of Biden, 1 in every 4 jobs created in America was a government job. That's a tremendous percentage. But under the first full month of President Trump, which we haven't even gotten started yet, an incredible 93% of all job gains were in the private sector. So that statistic just came out. Big gains for native-born Americans. For the first time in 15 months, the job gains for native-born Americans, for American people born in America, exceeded job gains for migrant and foreign-born workers. This is the first time that's happened in more than 15 months. Employment for native-born workers went up by 284,000, while foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. Now, you've heard the same stat where foreign workers were taking up all the jobs or almost all the jobs. In some cases, literally all of the jobs. And now it's 284,000 native-born jobs here, people born in our country, 284,000. While foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. First time that's happened in a long time. So these are incredible numbers, and they're very early. I mean, we're here for 5 weeks, but we have been talking about it since the big win in November 5th. So a lot of these people, they listen to us speak, and they say, well, I'm going to gear up, and they're gearing up, and so they've been gearing up. They've had a little time. It's not just 5 weeks, it's 5 weeks plus a few months. And they put it into effect pretty quickly. They have confidence that what I'm saying is going to happen. So with that, I'd like to ask a highly respected gentleman, Kevin Hassett. He's been with us for a long time, and he's been right about a lot. We had the greatest economy in history in the first term, and Kevin was a big part of it. So Kevin, could you maybe give it a little description, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Trump. I think that the 3 things that you emphasized during the campaign is that you wanted to create domestic, high-paying manufacturing jobs, that you wanted to end wasteful government spending and reduce the unproductive government workers, and in fact unleash them into the private economy where they could be more productive, and to create jobs for Americans. A lot of people said that if you deported illegals, that employment would go down, because no Americans would take those jobs. And if you look, 280,000 American-born folks were hired, manufacturing jobs are going up, and this is just out of the expectation of your future policies, really, sir. It's in April when your Reciprocal Trade Act is expected to happen. The tax cuts haven't passed yet, and so people are clearly expecting the golden age. And if you want to forecast the future numbers, everybody, just keep in mind that President Trump has already gotten us $1.7 trillion in commitments of new factories, and those haven't even happened yet. Those aren't even in the numbers. And so I expect this is going to be a glimpse of a golden age to come, sir.
Thank you very much. One other thing, in Canada, we find that they're charging us over 200% for dairy products. You know about that. And when I left, we had that well taken care of, but under Biden, they just kept raising it. Very difficult to deal with the Canadian representatives. 250% for dairy products, tariff. So where do you hear that? You don't hear that. They have a tremendously high tariff. Give you the exact numbers in a little while coming out on lumber. So they sell us lumber. They have a tremendous tariff. They make it impossible for us to sell lumber or dairy products into Canada, but our numbers are a tiny fraction of that, almost non-existent. And what we're doing is freeing up our forests from the environmental nonsense that they put on them, where you can't cut down a tree. And we have to cut down trees in order to build the firewalls. And those trees are sold, but we're freeing it up on an emergency basis because Canada has been ripping us off for years on tariffs for lumber and for dairy products. 250%, nobody ever talks about that. 250% tariff, which is taking advantage of our farmers, so that's not gonna happen anymore. They'll be met with the exact same tariff unless they drop it. And that's what reciprocal means. And we may do it as early as today, or we'll wait till Monday or Tuesday. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to charge the same thing. It's not fair. Never has been fair. And they've treated our farmers badly. Look, our country's been ripped off by everybody. That stops now. I had it stopped in my first term. And we're going to really stop it now because this has been very unfair. Our country, from an economic standpoint, a financial standpoint, and a trade standpoint, has been absolutely ripped off by almost every country in the world. Canada, Mexico, and then you just go right down the line. India charges us massive tariffs, massive. You can't even sell anything into India. It's almost restrictive. It is restrictive. You know, we do very little business inside. They've agreed, by the way, they want to cut their tariffs way down now because somebody's finally exposing them for what they've done. And same thing with China, same thing with a lot of other countries. And the EU has been a terrible abuser of this country. I mean, the EU was formulated in order to take advantage of the United States, and they have taken it, but they're not taking advantage when I'm in charge. So sometimes you'll hear some negative things. It's always from outside countries. America will be very strong. And, you know, if I'm a foreign country, they're going to do fine. But they can't do like they used to do because we're going to bring back our business into this country. We need it from a job standpoint. We need it from even just a psychological standpoint. Think of it, 90,000 factories are gone since the beginning of NAFTA. So we're not going to have that, and we're going to see them build it back. Now we've already had 5 major automobile companies. First time you've heard this in a long time, since my first term actually, where we were really rocking and rolling, and then Biden came in and he stopped everything. Like such a stupid thing to do, not even a believable thing. But we have many auto plants now coming in. We have big chip plants. We have the biggest chip company in the world, most powerful, probably one of the most powerful companies in the world. Wouldn't you say, Kevin? And he's coming in and they're building one of the largest chip plants in the world. That'll be done in Arizona, mostly in Arizona. And that'll give us a big percentage. At one plant will give us a big percentage of the chip market, something we have very little of. You know, we used to have Intel, and Intel was run by a man named Andy Grove. And Andy Grove was a tough, smart guy. I used to read about him when I was a young man, and he did an incredible job. He really dominated the chip business. And then he died, and I guess they had a series of people that didn't know what the hell they were doing, and we gradually lost the chip business, and now it's almost exclusively in Taiwan. They stole it from us. They took it from us, and I don't blame them. I give them credit. I blame the people that were sitting in this seat because they allowed it to happen. We could have protected that so easily, but so we had the chip business, and now it's all in Taiwan, almost exclusive, a little bit in South Korea, but mostly in Taiwan. And it's very important. Everything you do, everything you touch is now about chips. The brake of a car, cars have chips all over the place. I was reading an article the other day where they talk about the brakes of a car are loaded up with chips. Who would think that a brake has a chip in it? But it's all about chips. So that was a big thing. And they'll be investing hundreds of billions of dollars in this country, and we'll be taking back a big, big portion of that industry. We have others coming in too. But a lot of car manufacturers are coming in, and they're coming in fast. And one of the reasons you see these numbers, and again, Kevin said it, and I said it a little bit, but the fact that they know I won the election, so after I was president-elect, they assumed that I was going to do what I said, because I do what I say. And so these numbers really reflect a lot of things that took place since November 5th, right? So, Kevin, thank you very much. Great job. Any questions?
Mr. President, how concerned are you that the large-scale federal government layoffs will weaken the labor market? How concerned are you?
The large-scale fentanyl what?
The federal government layoffs will impact the labor market, will weaken the labor market.
Oh. No, I think the labor market's going to be fantastic, but it's going to have high-paying manufacturing jobs as opposed to government jobs. We had too many people in government. You can't just do that. We had too many. This is for 40 years. You know, this isn't just now. This built up and got worse and worse, and they just hire more and more people. You look at Department of Education, it seems like so many buildings I ride by, it says Department of Education. They're all over the place. And we don't even want it. We want the education to be given by the states. It'll be much better. It'll move us to the top of the list from the bottom of the list, and actually save us money. But it's too important to even talk about them. It'll save us a lot of money, but we don't want that. We want education to be given. So you go to Iowa and Indiana and Idaho and all these places that are so well run. They're going to be producing education that will be the equivalent of, like Denmark is one, and Norway, Sweden. Actually, China is one of the better in terms of education, and so we can't blame size anymore. You know, China has 1.4 billion people, but they're very high on the list. The one thing we're doing well on, we're number one on the list, is cost per pupil. We spend more money than any other country in the world by far. So I jokingly say the one thing we do well on is the cost. We spend more money, and yet we're toward the bottom of the list. Yeah.
Mr. President, I want to ask you, the joint address, millions of Americans watched your joint address earlier this week, where you warned that there could be a little disturbance that Americans could feel as a function of these taxes, these tariffs. How much disturbance are you willing to accept in the near term as a function of that? And to set expectations, how long should Americans expect things to cost a bit more?
Well, so far, Peter, there hasn't been very much, because these numbers are coming out. We're here for just a little over 4 weeks, and these are fantastic numbers. I was watching some of the reports this morning. They were surprised. There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance. I solved a little bit of that because I have respect for our auto companies, and I gave them a little bit of a 1-month reprieve because it was unfair, although I'm sure they'll take advantage of it. I see they're driving a lot of cars into the U.S. to try and avoid the tariffs, and they're taking advantage of it a little bit. But they called me, they asked me, they said, could they have a little bit of help? And I decided, they're American companies, USMCA, and I let them have that. But this really kicks in, the reciprocals, kicks in on, let's see, I guess the 2nd. And I wanted it to be the 1st so badly. It just didn't want to be on April Fool's Day. So I made it the 2nd. That's going to cost a lot of money. That one day is going to cost a lot of money, but that's okay. But I don't see it. I don't see anything. I see good reports. I think we're going to have good numbers from the beginning. Now, globalists won't love this because this brings jobs back to America. So if they're coming back to America, maybe you'll lose some in other parts of the world. But the other parts of the world have done very well, and they'll continue to do very well. But I think the United States is going to be doing record business. We'll bring a lot of those 90,000 factories that have been lost over the last number of years. It's hard to believe. 90,000, think of what 90,000 is. 90,000 plants and factories are gone. We're going to bring back many of those plants and factories.
One day the tariffs are on, the next day they're off. Right now the markets, as you know well, prefer stability. Are you done going forward with the pauses and the carve-outs? Is that it for those?
There'll always be changes and adjustments, and you can't just. I could have, for instance, told the American car companies, no, I'm not going to give you anything, and then you wouldn't have had to say, well, they're getting a little extra. It's just a little bit of a 1-month reprieve. They're very happy about what's happening. They won't have to go across borders, and you see the zigzagging. You have a fender made in Canada, you have something else made in Mexico. We don't want that. We want it made here. But there'll always be some modifications. I mean, if you have a wall in front of you, sometimes you have to go around the wall instead of through it. but I think very little. I think very little. On occasion, if we can do something, we want to help companies. We want to help companies create jobs. So I could have left that, and you wouldn't have had a minor change. Instead, I was asked by the real majors, the big majors, if they could do this, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. I want you to produce a lot of jobs. And numerous of the people, actually all of the people I spoke to have already been, they're very much on the way to already doing it. That's why you have auto jobs increase. And the man, I don't know him, Sean Fain, I don't know him, and I did great, as you know, with the auto workers, with the Teamsters, with unions. I did fantastically well, best numbers ever by a Republican. And I have a lot of respect for those people. But Sean Fain, who I don't know, but wasn't a supporter, although the auto workers were big supporters. I watched him last night, and he said Donald Trump is absolutely right on tariffs. He said what he's doing on tariffs is an incredible thing. And it's about time somebody had the guts to do it, because we're going to save auto manufacturing. And I said to people when I was campaigning, you're going to have so many auto jobs, you're not going to believe what's going to happen. We're going to load up Michigan. I won the state of Michigan, as you know. And part of the reason I won it was I got a lot of auto workers that voted for me, Detroit, etc. But I think people are going to be very surprised. Yes?
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned in your remarks chips manufacturing, how a significant percentage is now in Taiwan. You also mentioned it in your address to Congress, and you called on Congress to overturn the CHIPS Act, which had bipartisan support in the last Congress. Why would you like to see this particular law overturned, Mr. President?
Because it's hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's just a waste of money. Now, some people have already taken the money and used it. Actually, it's very hard to qualify, because they go by race, they go by gender, they go by all sorts of things. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. You won't be able to find those people. So I don't even think anybody can qualify. They have so many different categories in order to qualify. You have to have so many of a certain race, a certain gender, a certain this, a certain, and I don't think they can qualify, but if they take the money, they better qualify, because they'll be watching them. But it's a tremendous waste of money. I didn't give the greatest chip company in the world, one of the greatest companies, I didn't give them 10 cents. They came here because of tariffs, because they didn't want to pay the tariffs. And they also came here because they like the results of the election, because they know that I'm very pro-business and pro-jobs. I mean, I'm pro-business, not for business sake. I'm pro-business because of jobs, because business is producing the jobs. Okay?
On Russia, if I may, President Putin is bombing Ukraine.
Yeah.
Do you still believe him when he tells you that he wants peace?
Yeah, no, I believe him. I believe him. I think we're doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards. They don't have the cards. As you know, we're meeting in Saudi Arabia on sometime next week, early. And we're talking, I find that in terms of getting a final settlement, it may be easier dealing with Russia, which is surprising because they have all the cards. I mean, they're bombing the hell out of them right now. And I put a statement in, a very strong statement. Can't do that. You can't do that.
Mr. President.
We're trying to help them. And Ukraine has to get on the ball and get a job done. Michael, could you come up here? I see Michael back there. Good, I'm glad. He's traveling all over the world. I just saw him come in the door.
Yeah,
could you give a little definition of what's going on, please?
Sure. Well, the president has been crystal clear, and he's been clear to all sides. The fighting has to stop. Both sides need to get to the table. We had a good engagement. Both leaders have said only President Trump could do so, and only he has been able to do so. We had an initial engagement with the Russians. The Ukrainians had a great opportunity to bind our economies together through that mineral deal. Unfortunately, that didn't go so well, but we think we're going to get things back on track. Secretary Rubio, myself and Ukrainian delegation will be meeting in Saudi Arabia next week to get these talks back on track, get a ceasefire in place, and drive peace home under President Trump's leadership.
I think both parties want to settle. I think if I wasn't president, this war would have had no chance of settlement, zero chance. but I think we're going to get it settled and stopped. We got to stop. They're losing on average 2,000 soldiers a week. That's a lot of soldiers. Do you agree, Peter?
It's a lot of soldiers on both sides, I agree. Do you, Mr. President, think that Vladimir Putin is taking advantage of the U.S. pause right now on intelligence and military aid to Ukraine?
No, I actually think he's doing what anybody else would do. I think he wants to get it stopped and settled, and I think he's hitting them harder than he's been hitting them. And I think probably anybody in that position would be doing that right now. He wants to get it ended, and I think Ukraine wants to get it ended, but I don't see, it's crazy. They're taking tremendous punishment. I don't quite get it, but I suspect, Michael, he probably wants to get it ended.
He does, Mr. President. The Russians are taking incredible losses on the front. As the President has said, this is a meat grinder of people, of material, of national treasure, and no one else has any solutions except to let this war continue forever. But I'll add, the President has had multiple conversations and a visit from President Macron of France, Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom. We have the NATO Secretary General coming next week. We have this meeting with the Ukrainians. We've had it with the Russians. All of this in the President's first month in his leadership. We will engage in the shuttle diplomacy, and we will continue to use his leadership and what leverage we have to get both sides of the peace table. It's not going to be easy, but President Trump...
This war should have never happened. It would have never happened if I were president, but it did happen. So a lot of other things shouldn't have happened, too. We shouldn't have 21 million people pouring into our country through open borders, many of whom are criminals, very bad criminals, including murderers, thousands of murderers. Many killed, far more than one person, and they're roaming our streets. But Tom Homan and Kristi Noem are doing an incredible job, and we're getting them out of here. And we'll get them out. We'll get them all out. But all these things shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't have inflation. We shouldn't have had this horrible inflation where the prices have gone up. Look at eggs. So we're doing a good job. We're doing a good job.
Mr. President, in regards to the pause on military assistance to Ukraine, you put out on your social media post today that Russia is pounding Ukraine.
That's right.
Why not provide Ukraine with air defenses? And what happens, Mr. President, when Ukraine runs out of the Patriot missile batteries?
Good question. Because I have to know that they want to settle. I don't know that they want to settle. If they don't want to settle, we're out of there because we want them to settle. And I'm doing it to stop death. More important than anything else. Secondarily, way down the line is the money. So we're in for $350 billion, and Europe is in for $100 billion. They should be in for the same or more than us. And, you know, I watched over the last week or so what's going on in Europe. This thing could end up in World War III if we don't get it settled. This could really end up in a World War III. We got to get it settled.
So on Iran, how confident are you that the Iranians will negotiate with you? And is Israel on board with this outrage?
Yeah, I saw the hostages the other day. They came in, people that were not young, some young and some older, much older. And they gave, it was hard for them to do it actually. They gave statements as to what happened. I was asking, what happened? How was it? I said, did you see anybody in there that was kind, like out of the hundreds of people that you were seeing, Hamas? Did some of them wink at you and say, don't worry, you're going to be okay, or give you a piece of bread, or no? I said, were there any people that were like kind? I was shocked. The answer was nobody. There was nobody. Just the opposite. They'd be slapped and punched. One man broke his ribs. He couldn't breathe for a month. It was brutal. I was so surprised. Could you think there'd be a couple of people that would be kind, that would say, you're going to be okay, but they had none of that. It's pretty amazing. Brian?
Thank you, President.
He's a kind person.
Well, according to
although not to Zelensky, he wasn't.
Well, you know what, that's another
but to Trump, he's been good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
Nice tie, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I like yours too.
Two questions. One on peace. Why don't you think any other European countries are offering a peace deal? It seems like no one's come to the table for peace except for you.
Yeah. It's a very good question. Sometimes questions aren't answerable. They're in a very unusual position. they don't know how to end the war. I think I do know how to end the war. Despite the Russia hoax, I've always had a good relationship with Putin. And, you know, he wants to end the war. He wants to end it. And I think he's going to be more generous than he has to be. And that's pretty good. That means a lot of good things. Because frankly, you could have made a great deal if this war never started, you could have made a great deal. I don't know that anything would have had to be given up. This was not a war that was going to start, Brian. And it didn't start. For 4 years, you know, somebody said, well, how do we know that? Well, for 4 years, it didn't start. I used to speak to Vladimir about it. I used to speak to him about it at length. It was the apple of his eye, but there was no way he was going in. And he knew, you know, there were going to be consequences. But it did start. I mean, think of what happened. Inflation, you have the war with Ukraine and Russia, that wouldn't have happened. October 7th would have never happened. Israel, they had no money. Iran had no money. Iran was stone cold broke, and now they have a lot of money. And that's going to be the next thing you'll be talking about is Iran. What's going to happen with Iran? And there'll be some interesting days ahead. That's all I can tell you. You know, we're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time. And we'll see what happens. But we're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. You can't let them have a nuclear weapon. I think that I would have had a deal within 1 month after the rigged election of 2020. They were all set to make a deal. And then when I lost, they saw this person who's a stupid person, very stupid person. And they said, let's not make a deal. And they were right. He took the sanctions off. They became rich under Biden. They went from having no money to having $300 billion. All in a short period. It's oil. Oil builds up fast. It's a nice living if you have a nice oil well. And they do. They have a lot of nice oil wells, right? So anyway, it's going to be a big thing. It's an interesting time in the history of the world. But we have a situation with Iran that something's going to happen very soon. Very, very soon. You'll be talking about that pretty soon, I guess. And hopefully we can have a peace deal. You know, I'm not speaking out of strength or weakness. I'm just saying I'd rather see a peace deal than the other. But the other will solve the problem.
Mr. President, your allies are calling on you to pardon Derek Chauvin. Are you considering pardoning Derek Chauvin?
No, I haven't even heard about it. No.
Mr. President, on peace.
I haven't heard that.
In the first term, you may recall, I broke the news that you were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And the reason for that was the work that you led on the Abraham Accords. I spoke yesterday with the member of parliament, the Norwegian parliament, that nominated you. And he said what the Nobel Committee is looking for from you, Mr. President, is security guarantees for Ukraine. Is that a possibility, Mr. President?
So, before I even think about that, I want to settle the war, get it finished. Because if I'm not here, nobody's going to settle it. And President Macron has said that, and everybody said that, the prime ministers and presidents. We're pushing very hard. That's all I'm thinking about now. As far as the question about security later, that's the easy part. The hard part is getting it settled. We got to get them. We're losing 2,000 human beings every week. More than that, actually. 2,000 nice, young, although they're getting older because they're drafting much older now. In the case of one country, much older, because a lot of the young people have been killed. It's very sad, and I'd like to see if I could stop that. And I'd like to also see if we could stop making these massive payments from the United States. I mean, Biden gave away money like it was water, with no anything, got nothing for it. Europe did it in the form of a loan. They get their money back, we don't. So that's how we came up with the rare earth deal. But we started, you know, behind the 8 ball. He could have gone to Europe. He could have said, come on, you got to put up money with us. You got to put up money with us. But he never did that. They just kept handing money out because he was grossly incompetent. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
And there you have it for President Trump in the Oval Office. Some great questions, some great victories shared as we are coming up to the U.S. Monetary Policy Forum in New York City. I'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. Of course, Colonial Metals. You can scan that QR code or visit Free Trump Book, or excuse, not the Free Trump Book, although that's lovely too. How about that freegoldguy.com/RSBN. And look at all of your options for gold and silver as you go into this new year, whether it's retirement, sending a kid to college, a great way to back up your property's assets, 401ks or IRAs, and the time-tested commodities known as gold and silver, going up over 840% since the year 2000 alone. Visit Colonial Metals Group at freegoldguy.com/RSBN. We'd like to thank Berna as well. You know, freedom and security are the cornerstones of the American way, and at Berna.com, they have partnered with a great team in order to bring you pro-2A values, but in a non-lethal force. This company that embodies these values are in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Berna's commitment to safety is personal for every American. As personal advocates of the Second Amendment here at Right Side and with Berna, they know the importance of self-defense. That's why we stand behind Berna's less lethal launchers, effective and easy to use. Most importantly, you can use them in all 50 states. And you can save now 10% at Berna.com/RSBN. Join me in supporting an American company committed to everyone's peace of mind. Don't wait till it's too late. 10% off now, Berna.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code as well. And how about MyPillow.com/RSBN? The great Mike Lindell. With his mega sale, you could get the My Cross, save 30%. How about those My Towels, $29.98 for a 6-pack, or those flannel sheets, $44.98. MyPillow.com/RSBN, or call 800-836-7566. Support Mr. Mike Lindell, a great champion of free speech and our founding documents. He loves this country. He loves election integrity as well. Shop now, MyPillow.com/RSBN for up to 80% off of everything. And thank you to all our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live as we await this Monetary Policy Forum in New York, and we will toss that there live now for you.
To those who followed our process 5 years ago, we will hold outreach events around the country involving a range of parties, including Fed Listens events. We're open to new ideas and critical feedback. We will host a research conference in Washington in May. Our intent is to wrap up the review by late summer. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions. Danielle.
All right. Thanks for that. Before we get into the current conjuncture, is there anything more you can share about where you think the framework is going to land? It was nice to hear the parameters that you laid out, but is there anything more that you can say beyond what you just?
Sure. So I said there are two things really. There's changes to the consensus statement, and then they're looking at really our post-meeting communications. We're going to look at those two things a lot. And as it relates to the consensus statement, which is also known as the Statement on Longer-Run Goals and Monetary Policy, therefore it needed a shorter name, we are going to be looking a lot at the changes that we made in 2020. So if you go back to 2020, what we had was we'd been at the effective lower bound for 7 years. We never got rates above 2%. We were at 1.5% when the pandemic hit. And the feeling very much was that if even a mild downturn came, we'd be back to the effective lower bound maybe again for years on end. So we were looking for ways to try to minimize the likelihood of that. And a pretty standard result in the research was a kind of a makeup strategy. That's what that was. So the framework changes that we made were very focused on the importance of the effective lower bound problem, which was thought to be the big problem at the time. And those were the changes that we made. So, and we thought that those things, that those issues would be persistent, but the universe had other ideas. And the pandemic arrived just a few months after we implemented the framework and really changed the whole mixture. And effectively the idea of an overshoot a modest overshoot or moderate overshoot of inflation really became irrelevant, and we were back to the regular framework, and we did what we did, and you have the results today. So I think we'll be looking at, for example, the focus in the consensus statement. We'll be looking at the focus that we had on the effective lower bound. It's probably not the base case anymore, but it's probably still relevant. We'll be looking at shortfalls, which is an interesting idea, and there are different ways to express that. And we'll be certainly will also be looking at the idea of having a moderate overshoot of inflation over the 2% target following periods when inflation has been low. We're looking at all of those things, and again, I expect to be done, by the end of the summer. On the communications, particularly our post-meeting communications, we're going to take a close look at the SEP and also compare ourselves to what other central banks around the world do. And this will be a couple of weeks from now. We'll have our second meeting, and I think we'll be done in time for sort of the end of the summer.
Okay, that's great. Let me pick up on this question about the level of prices versus the inflation rate. Economists spend a lot of time making the distinction between the rate of change and the level. I'm not sure that the public fully understands this because you see these surveys about how frustrated people are with inflation. Inflation now is not that different than your target. It's above, but not meaningfully so. But do you think that price stability needs to take into account how far you away from the objective, and if you've had a big run-up and the level remains high, even if the inflation rate is back to normal, is that something we need to reconsider?
What the public experiences is the prices of things. And the prices of things went up a lot in 2021 and 22, and to some extent in 23. And when we talk about inflation, we're obviously talking about the rate of change now. But the public's not wrong. They are experiencing prices, and obviously you can have a great labor market, but if people are really struggling because of high prices, that's what they're really going to feel. So they're right about what they're saying. In terms of, I don't think there's any need to redefine price stability. I think you can always go back to the way Alan Greenspan said it. I won't get the exact words, but everyone here knows the idea is if businesses and households are making their economic decisions without having to consider the possibility of high inflation, that's price stability. I don't think we need to rethink inflation the way we deal with it. I don't think we need to reinvent price stability. So,
okay. Okay, the elephant in the room. Economists normally assume that a tariff is passed into domestic prices, and as the Secretary of Treasury said yesterday, that would change the level of prices once, but wouldn't mean anything for inflation a year later. If you're looking at what happens over the next year, how would we know if the conventional view is not correct and that it's leaked into something more troubling?
So I think that start with the general thought is that if there's a spike in prices that's a one-time thing that is going to go through the economy, then it's not appropriate to react to it because our policy by design will reduce employment and activity, and it would not have really been needed to be done. So you look through those things if you can. So if you put that in the context of tariffs, I think if you look at where forecasts are, look at the blue chip, look where everybody's forecasting some inflation effect from tariffs. So it's very likely that if tariffs are imposed, and let's remember, we really don't know what's happening yet. We're at a stage where we're still very uncertain about what will be tariffed, for how long, at what level. We're going to have to wait to see all of that. But the likelihood is that some of that will find its way, it'll hit the exporters, the importers, the retailers, and to some extent the consumers, and we'll see what that is. And in a simple case where we know it's a one-time thing, the textbook would say look through it. But I think the situation, you would want to also be sure of a couple of things. One just is that if it turns into a series of things and it's more than that, and if the increases are larger, that would matter. And what really would matter is what's happening with longer-term inflation expectations. and how persistent are the inflationary effects. You want to look at all of those things. And you'd want to remember the current context, which is we came off of very high inflation, and we haven't fully returned to 2% on a sustainable basis. So you got to put all that in the mix as you make this decision. I would point people back to 2019, when we had the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we had lower immigration, and we had regulatory policy under President Trump in the first regime, and we wound up cutting 3 times because growth weakened so much. So there are many effects of tariffs. And as I pointed out, it's really the effect of all of these policies that matter for our policy. It's not simply what's happening with tariffs. It's what's happening with growth and all the other things as a result of these broad changes in economic policy, not just tariffs.
Okay, just to put a point on this, I think I know what you're going to say, but the usual rule that economists hold is that when uncertainty is high, we're gradualist. And I'm wondering whether you view that as the right benchmark or anchor to think about.
I view it as the right benchmark or anchor for right now, and that's because the costs of being cautious are very, very low. The economy's fine; it doesn't need us to do anything really, and so we can wait and we should wait. I think there are cases where uncertainty is high, where that would not be the case, where the costs of going slow might be high, and those would be, for example, if inflation expectations were clearly under pressure, or if you're at the beginning of the pandemic and uncertainty is unquestionably elevated, but you nonetheless act very aggressively because of the potential cost of not doing so.
Okay, that's interesting. But I'll ask a couple more conjunctural questions, but there's a lot of people in the room here that are very curious about what you want to say about the Basel III endgame. So that's inside baseball, but people's wallets depend on this. So you want to say anything about that?
Sure, absolutely. So our view at the Fed is we very much intend to complete the Basel III endgame. And we think that's very important. We think that the Basel Accords really are important to set sort of minimum standards for international banking around the world. And we expect that we will. We're kind of on hold until the U.S. banking agencies are really back up and running with new leadership. But once they are, we fully expect to get back to that work and complete the Basel III endgame. And I have a good reason to think that we'll be able to do that.
That's good news. Another little bit of inside baseball, but there's been a lot of discussion in the last few weeks about changing some of the statistics that are emphasized about the economy. And the Commerce Department recently disbanded the Federal Economic Statistics Advisory Committee. And I know during COVID, you felt like there were many indicators of the economy that were kind of broken or not so helpful. So do we need to worry about whether the Fed's ability to do its job might come into question because of deficiencies in the statistics? And are you already, let's do that, and I'll ask a follow-up.
Yeah, so there's two different things. I think it needs to be said that the government data we get from, government-gathered data we get from the Bureau of Economic Analysis and the Bureau of Labor Statistics is incredibly important and really the gold standard for data. Being able to track what's going on in the economy is very, very important, and it's something that the United States has led in for a long, long time, and something we need to continue to lead in. It's true that survey responses have gone down and that some of the data have become more volatile. That just means it's something we need to keep doing and invest in. So I think that's important. On the pandemic data, that's a different thing. You needed to measure things like how many people are going to restaurants, how many, you could look at open table data and things like that. So there were lots and lots of pieces of data we were getting about that showed how many people are coming back to work, riding the subway and that kind of thing. And that was important. It turns out all that data isn't super relevant except in an emergency. The other thing is, though, at the Fed, we've always, for some time now, we've been, trying to work with these very large data sets that are available in real time now. For example, from credit card companies and things like that. And, trying to use these new and vast data collections in a real-time way, is something that's really helpful.
Okay, I was going to ask you about whether or not there's some favorite private sector statistics that you think everybody should be looking at, but it sounds like you've just given us a hint on that. Let me ask a couple longer-term questions. I know you're not in the job of reflecting yet, but when we look back at the rise of inflation and then its decline, what do you think the lesson's going to be about what we've just lived through?
Yeah, so I think it's actually still early to say. I think the question of what happened and why and what all those questions around the events of the pandemic and the inflation and the efforts to bring inflation down. Economists are going to be battling over that for long after all of us are gone. But I would say a couple things. One thing is just that the tails are fatter than you think. However fat you think the tails are, they're fatter than you think. And human nature is, we always talk about uncertainty and how we understand everything's highly uncertain. We say it all the time. The tails are fatter than we think. So nobody saw the pandemic coming, obviously. It wasn't reflected in our framework. When it came, we just went back to the old framework and dealt with it. But it was, there's always possibility. That's one thing. Secondly, I think if you look, and I talked about this at Jackson Hole last year. If I look back and it looks to me like what you had was a global burst of inflation everywhere at the same time, and it largely, you got to look at global factors, and it amounted to very strong demand, stronger than we thought. I don't think we had, the forecast error was two parts. Part one was demand was just stronger than we thought. It really was. We had in mind, the recovery from the global financial crisis, and instead we got this really high-powered response, expansion, recovery. So the other side is the supply side. The supply side was constrained. We lost 8 million workers, and it took a long time to get them back. And it was also all of the supply stuff that was happening. That took longer than we thought to unsnaggle. And we'd never seen it before. We knew in real time that it was going to be really hard to get that right. But so those two things created inflation globally, and central banks stepped in, and pretty broadly, we're back to close to mandated inflation and employment close to the natural rate, not just in the United States but everywhere. So in a way, the framework worked, but I think we learned some of those lessons, and we'll still be learning them.
Okay, one other question in this direction. The U.S. has actually had the fastest recovery of all the major economies, and do we understand why that is? And does that? There was a question in the last panel about Y-star and potential growth. Do you think that we are learning something now about what the speed limit for the economy is, or is this just happenstance?
Yeah, I would put down the U.S.'s outperformance to three things, and the first is just one would be structural characteristics, and that's more flexible labor market, highly developed capital markets, culture of innovation, rule of law, all the things that make this. And we have a venture capital industry. Other countries are trying to do early stage financing out of banks. That's not going to work. So all of those things make us account for 40 years of productivity. That's double Europe's productivity. It increases. So that's thing one. Thing two is just population. We had a big population increase in 22 and 23, and that doesn't help with per capita, but that moves top line. And what was the third thing? Oh, productivity. So we had a really significant burst in productivity, and from a range of factors, you can never tell exactly where it's coming from. Some of those factors suggest, this gets to your last question, suggest that productivity will be kind of a one-time event. So, people were wound up automating a lot of functions in retail, because people didn't want to work in retail anymore. But that may just be a one-time thing. Technological developments, on the other hand, might give us years and years of productivity. So there are a whole bunch of other things, and so we don't really know how long this burst in productivity will be sustained. But I think I never expected to see productivity this high for this long. And our staff is marking up their estimates of potential growth for now and taking some signal about the future. You won't have that population thing going forward, but productivity has been really strong, and I think it does actually raise, at least for the relatively near term, the level of potential output.
Okay, that's good. Okay, 30 years of teaching booth students, I've learned you have to end these things with a fun question. So, who's your favorite central banker? And I'll give you a hall pass on anybody that was on the board while you've been there.
What defines favorite central banker? Living?
You can constrain to living, or you can specify dead.
Well, I mean, I would have. I don't know.
Open-ended question.
I'll take the easy route and say Paul Volcker, whom I did know over time, and pretty obviously in central banking, nobody wants to be working in a central bank when inflation is really high, but everybody who works in a central bank knows what they have to do when inflation is high. And he set the gold standard for that. That is the thing. Most of the time, for 40 years, we haven't had to do that. It's just kind of demand management through a regular cycle. But when you have very high inflation and you have to do this is why we're independent. It's not for the good times. It's for the times when we're doing something which may be unpopular. That is our assignment. And I think Paul Volcker kind of established that. That was really not quite so clearly established at the time. So I'm going to go with Paul Volcker.
Okay, I'm going to out you on a private conversation, but I don't think you're going to mind too much, which is the Cork Center that hosts this event has a bunch of experts panels of economists where you can go ahead and answer a bunch of questions. They'll tell you who your favorite economist is. And Jay Powell's favorite economist is Anil Kashyap.
Let me tell you, it's a true story, and that was not a happy day. To learn that,
Anyway, well, thank you, and we're so glad that you were able to be here and share your thoughts. And
Great.
So,
thanks very much.
Yeah.
And you're watching a conference on U.S. monetary policy with Fed Chair Jerome Powell taking questions at the Chicago Booth School. But you will also get the latest news from the Trump White House right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live just before the 1 o'clock hour this afternoon on the East Coast. Still a good morning to you all the way on the West Coast if you happen to be watching from the Golden State of California. And that's the White House, of course, in the split screen there for you, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, as President Trump works diligently for you, the American people. We'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, Colonial Metals Group, a great way to be your hedge and bet against inflation. Make sure you scan that QR code now to shield your savings, or visit freegoldguide.com/RSBN for all the information on gold and silver. Paul Stone, the remarkable CEO, and his team really making the best guide for you possible at no obligation, but to find out what you could do for your retirement or those big monumental moments in life. Colonial Metals Group, thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. How about Tax Network USA? TNUSA.com/RSBN. Settle those back taxes today by calling 800-357-1415. You want to protect yourself from the IRS before tax day, April 15th, fast approaching. Again, a call to 800-357-1415 or visiting tnusa.com/RSBN will answer all of your needs. These are experts on property taxes, state and federal income tax as well. Tax Network USA Incorporated. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, and AngelPaste.com. The Miracle Cream, their highest selling Make sure that you don't have those dry hands at the end of winter here. This keeps your hands glowing. Non-GMO, no chemicals, a Christian-owned company based out of Spring, Texas, off of the Gulf of America. They have some awesome products that can take care of vitamin C health as well with their immune option or their mosquito repellent cream as well. Again, all natural, non-GMO, no chemicals, just good stuff for your body to absorb. AngelPaste.com, Christian owned. They hire veterans as well. Thank you for sponsoring us here at RSBN Live. And how about Byrna? We love this group that is Pro2A, but Byrna.com/RSBN. Save 10% now and scan that QR code. A company based in Fort Wayne, Indiana with the commitment to personal safety, a passionate advocate for the Second Amendment and every American. That's why we stand behind Byrna's less lethal launchers. They're effective, easy to use, most importantly, legal in all 50 states. And with no background checks and the ability to ship directly to your doorstep, Byrna's less lethal ensures that safety is never out of reach. Whether you're protecting your home or your loved ones, Byrna's powerful, less lethal kinetic and tear gas ammunition can incapacitate attackers for up to 30 minutes. So it allows you to protect yourself and your loved ones. God forbid there is some kind of attack on your bodily autonomy. And the best part about it, you don't have to take another life in order to defend yourself. So Byrna.com/RSBN, save 10% now with all of these curated Byrna bundles. Byrna.com/RSBN. And of course, we love mypillow.com/RSBN. Mr. Mike Lindell, a great protector of patriotism, election integrity, and the First Amendment. The mega sale. His My Cross going for 30%, or a 6-pack towel set at My Towels, $29.98, or those very comfortable flannel sheets, $44.98. The best way to have a great day and a beautiful morning is to get a good night's rest. And Mr. Mike Lindell and mypillow.com/RSBN is your answer to that. 800-836-7566, or 2,000 different products for up to 80% off just about everything on the website. So mypillow.com/RSBN. Thank you to Mike Lindell and all he does for the great American patriots, not only in Minnesota, but across this great country of ours. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live at 1 o'clock exactly on the East Coast this beautiful afternoon. Hope that you have some wonderful plans with you and your loved ones as we look forward to President Trump hopefully get some R&R at Mar-a-Lago. We know he likes those working weekends, but I'm sure he'll squeeze in some golf and maybe meet up with some American patriots down in the Sunshine State as well. Well, Mr. Matthew Alvarez will be on this afternoon in case there's any breaking news and also for some special events. So tune in to our second broadcast, which will come later on this afternoon. But for everyone here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, I'm Robert McNeely. Good afternoon. God bless. Stick with us here on the right side of history. We'll see you very soon.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Parents, do your kids know what courage really means? It's about standing up for America even when there's a target on your back. That's why Mike Huckabee's team created the Kids Guide to the Courage of the President. This important guide tells kids everything they need to know about President Trump's unwavering courage, and you can get it for free. With your free order, you'll receive free bonus gifts, including the Kid's Guide to President Trump and a Christmas ornament commemorating Trump's call for us to fight. Get it all for free at freetrumpbook.com. That's freetrumpbook.com.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.